I'm not done. I'm not done. We're going to do...
Section 1 of the Prelude.
The Prelude.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more
Never even heard
information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org.
It's nice to meet you, sir.
The Prelude by William Wordsworth. Book first. Introduction, Childhood and Schooltime. Oh, there is blessing in this gentle breeze, a visitant that while it fans my cheek doth seem half conscious of the joy it brings from the green fields and from yon azure sky. Whate'er its mission, the soft breeze can come to none more grateful than to me, escaped from the vast city where I long had pined a discontented sojourner, now free as a bird to settle where I will. What dwelling shall receive me? In what vale shall be my harbour? Underneath what grove shall I take up my home? And what clear stream shall with its murmur lull me into rest? The earth is all before me, with a heart joyous nor scared at its own liberty. I look about, and should the chosen guide be nothing better than a wandering cloud, I cannot miss my way. I breathe again. Trances of thought and mountings of the mind come fast upon me. It is shaken off, that burthen of my own unnatural self. The heavy weight of many a weary day, not mine, and such as were not made for me. Long months of peace, if such bold word accord with any promises of human life, long months of ease and undisturbed delight are mine in prospect. Whither shall I turn, by road or pathway, or through trackless field, up hill or down, or shall some floating thing upon the river point me out my course?
It's a big moment, William.
Dear liberty, yet what would it avail but for a gift that consecrates the joy? For I, methought, while the sweet breath of heaven was blowing on my body, felt within a correspondent breeze that gently moved with quickening virtue, but is now become a tempest, a redundant energy, vexing its own creation. Thanks to both and their congenial powers that, while they join in breaking up a long-continued frost, bring with them vernal promises, the hope of active days urged on by flying hours. Days of sweet leisure, taxed with patient thought, abstruse, nor wanting punctual service high, matins and vespers of harmonious verse.
I'm going to stop there. The synapses here, it sounds, and I was just thinking about it. That's why I'm doing this, because I was literally just thinking about it. I'm literally just doing sit-ups and push-ups. If you think about it, in front of George, when they're talking, I'm literally doing push-ups and sit-ups and over and over and over, and they're writing different stuff about it every time.
Slayer.
Every move is a push-up or sit-up. Think about that.
Thus far, O friend, did I, not used to make a present joy the matter of a song, pour forth that day my soul in measured strains that would not be forgotten, and I here recorded. To the open fields I told a prophecy. Poetic numbers came spontaneously to clothe in priestly robe a renovated spirit singled out. Such hope was mine, for holy services. My own voice cheered me, and far more the mind's internal echo of the imperfect sound. To both I listened, drawing from them both a cheerful confidence in things to come. Content and not unwilling now to give a respite to this passion, I paced on with brisk and eager steps, and came at length to a green shady place, where down I sat beneath a tree, slackening my thoughts by choice, and settling into gentler happiness.
It's a sway, bro. Get
It
the
was
sway
autumn,
out.
and a clear and placid day, with warmth as much as needed from a sun 2 hours declined towards the west. A day with silver clouds and sunshine on the grass, and in the sheltered and the sheltering grove a perfect stillness. Many were the thoughts encouraged and dismissed, till choice was made of a known vale whither my feet should turn, nor rest till they had reached the very door of the one cottage which methought I saw. No picture of mere memory ever looked so fair, while upon the fancied scene I gazed with growing love. A higher power than fancy gave assurance of some work of glory there forthwith to be begun, perhaps too there performed. Thus long I mused, nor e'er lost sight of what I mused upon, save when amid the stately groves of oaks, now here, now there, an acorn from its cup dislodged, through sere leaves rustled, or at once to the bare earth dropped with a startling sound. From that soft couch I rose not, till the sun had almost touched the horizon, casting then a backward glance upon the curling cloud of city smoke, by distance ruralized. Keen as a truant or a fugitive, but as a pilgrim resolute, I took, even with the chance equipment of that hour, the road that pointed toward the chosen vale. It was a splendid evening, and my soul once more made trial of her strength, nor lacked Aeolian visitations. But the harp was soon defrauded, and the banded host of harmony dispersed in straggling sounds, and lastly utter silence. Be it so. Why think of anything but present good? So like a homebound labourer I pursued my way beneath the mellowing sun that shed mild influence, nor left in me one wish again to bend the Sabbath at that time to a servile yoke. What need of many words? The pleasant loitering journey through 3 days continued brought me to my hermitage. I spare to tell of what ensued, the life in common things, the endless store of things, rare or at least so seeming, every day found all about me in one neighbourhood. The self-congratulation, and from morn to night unbroken cheerfulness serene. But speedily an earnest longing rose to brace myself to some determined aim, reading or thinking, either to lay up new stores or rescue from decay the old by timely interference. Therewith came hopes still higher, that with outward life I might endue some airy fantasies that had been floating loose about for years, and to such beings temperately deal forth the many feelings that oppressed my heart. That hope hath been discouraged. Welcome light dawns from the east, but dawns to disappear and mock me with a sky that ripens not into a steady morning. If my mind, remembering the bold promise of the past, would gladly grapple with some noble theme, vain is her wish. Where'er she turns, she finds impediments from day to day renewed. And now it would content me to yield up those lofty hopes awhile, the present gifts of humbler industry. Oh dear friend, the poet, gentle creature as he is, hath, like the lover, his unruly times. He fits when he is neither sick nor well, though no distress be near him but his own unmanageable thoughts. His mind, best pleased while she is duteous as the mother dove sits brooding, lives not always to that end. Like the innocent bird, hath goadings on that drive her as in trouble through the groves. With me is now such passion to be blamed no otherwise than as it lasts too long.
Good call.
When, as becomes a man who would prepare for such an arduous work, I through myself make rigorous inquisition, the report is often cheering, for I neither seem to lack that first great gift, the vital soul, nor general truths, which are themselves a sort of elements and agents, underpowers, subordinate helpers of the living mind. Nor am I naked of external things, forms, images, nor numerous other aids of less regard, though one perhaps with toil and needful to build up a poet's praise. Time, place, and manners do I seek, and these are found in plenteous store, but nowhere such as may be singled out with steady choice. No little band of yet remembered names, whom I in perfect confidence might hope to summon back from lonesome banishment, and make them dwellers in the hearts of men now living, or to live in future years. Sometimes the ambitious power of choice, mistaking proud spring-tide swellings for a regular sea, will settle on some British theme, some old romantic tale by Milton left unsung. More often turning to some gentle place within the groves of chivalry, I pipe to shepherd swains, or seated harp in hand, amid reposing nights by a riverside or fountain, listen to the grave reports of dire enchantments faced and overcome by the strong mind, and tales of warlike feats, where spear encountered spear, and sword with sword fought, as if conscious of the blazonry that the shield bore, so glorious was the strife. Whence inspiration for a song that winds through ever-changing scenes of votive quest, wrongs to redress, harmonious tribute paid to patient courage and unblemished truth, to firm devotion, zeal unquenchable, and Christian meekness hallowing faithful loves. Sometimes more sternly moved I would relate how vanquished Mithridates northward passed, and hidden in the cloud of years became Odin, the father of a race by whom perished the Roman Empire. How the friends and followers of Sertorius, out of Spain flying, found shelter in the Fortunate Isles, and left their usages, their arts and laws, to disappear by a slow gradual death, to dwindle and to perish one by one, starved in those narrow bounds, but not the soul of liberty which 1500 years survived, and when the European came with skill and power that might not be withstood, did like a pestilence maintain its hold, and wasted down by glorious death that race of natural heroes. For I would record how in tyrannic times some high-souled man, unnamed among the chronicles of kings, suffered in silence for truth's sake. Or tell how that one Frenchman, through continued force of meditation on the inhuman deeds of those who conquered first the Indian Isles, went single in his ministry across the ocean, not to comfort the oppressed, but like a thirsty wind, to roam about withering the oppressor. How Gustavus sought help at his need in Dalecarlia's mines. How Wallace fought for Scotland, left the name of Wallace to be found like a wild flower all over his dear country. Wallace, like a family of ghosts, to people the steep rocks and river banks. the natural sanctuaries, with a local soul
bullshit.
of independence and stern liberty. Sometimes it suits me best to invent a tale from my own heart, more near akin to my own passions and habitual thoughts.
You see that? You can tell they're like
Main
screaming.
lofty, but the unsubstantial structure melts before the very sun that brightens it, mist into air dissolving. Then a wish, my best and favourite aspiration, mounts with yearning towards some philosophic song of truth that cherishes our daily life. With meditations passionate from deep recesses in man's heart, immortal verse thoughtfully fitted to the Orphean lyre. But from this awful burthen I full soon take refuge and beguile myself with trust that mellower years will bring a riper mind, clearer insight. Thus my days are passed in contradiction, with no skill to part vague longing, haply bred by want of power, from paramount impulse not to be withstood, timorous capacity from prudence, from circumspection infinite delay. Humility and modest awe themselves betray me, serving often for a cloak to a more subtle selfishness, that now locks every function up in blank reserve, now dupes me, trusting to an anxious eye that with intrusive restlessness beats off simplicity and self-presented truth. Ah, better far than this, to stray about voluptuously through fields and rural walks, and ask no record of the hours, resigned to vacant musing, unreproved neglect of all things and a deliberate holiday. Far better never to have heard the name of zeal and just ambition than to live baffled and plagued by a mind that every hour turns recreant to her task, takes heart again, then feels immediately some hollow thought hang like an interdict upon her hopes. This is my lot, for either still I find some imperfection in the chosen theme, or see of absolute accomplishment much wanting, so much wanting in myself that I recoil and droop, and seek repose in listlessness from vain perplexity, unprofitably travelling toward the grave, like a false steward who hath much received and renders nothing back. Was it for this that one, the fairest of all rivers, loved to blend his murmurs with Minerva's song, and from his alder shades and rocky falls, and from his fords and shallows, sent a voice that flowed along my dreams? For this didst thou, O Derwent, winding among grassy holms, where I was looking on, a babe in arms, make ceaseless music that composed my thoughts to more than infant softness, giving me amid the fretful dwellings of mankind a foretaste, a dim earnest, of the calm that nature breathes among the hills and groves. When he had left the mountains and received on his smooth breast the shadow of those towers that yet survive, a shattered monument of feudal sway, the bright blue river passed along the margin of our terrace walk. The tempting playmate whom we dearly loved, oh, many a time have I, a 5 years' child, in a small mill race severed from his stream, made one long bathing of a summer's day, basked in the sun, and plunged and basked again, alternate, all a summer's day, or scoured the sandy fields, leaping through flowery groves of yellow ragwort, or when rock and hill, the woods, and distant Skidaw's lofty height were bronzed with deepest radiance, stood alone beneath the sky, as if I had been born on Indian plains, and from my mother's hut had run abroad in wantonness to sport a naked savage in the thunder shower. Fair seed time had my soul, and I grew up fostered alike by beauty and by fear, much favoured in my birthplace, and no less in that beloved vale to which ere long we were transplanted. There were we let loose for sports of wider range. There I had told 10 birthdays, when among the mountain slopes frost and the breath of frosty wind had snapped the last autumnal crocus. 'Twas my joy, with store of springes o'er my shoulder hung, to range the open heights where woodcocks run along the smooth green turf. Through half the night, scudding away from snare to snare, I plied that anxious visitation. Moon and stars were shining o'er my head. I was alone, and seemed to be a trouble to the peace that dwelt among them. Sometimes it befell in these night wanderings that a strong desire o'erpowered my better reason, and the bird which was the captive of another's toil became my prey. And when the deed was done, I heard among the solitary hills low breathings coming after me, and sounds of undistinguishable motion, steps almost as silent as the turf they trod. Nor less when spring had warmed the cultured vale, moved we as plunderers where the mother bird had in high places built her lodge. Though mean our object and inglorious, yet the end was not ignoble. Oh, when I have hung above the raven's nest by knots of grass and half-inch fissures in the slippery rock, but ill sustained, and almost, so it seemed, suspended by the blast that blew amain, shouldering the naked crag. Oh, at that time, while on the perilous ridge I hung alone, with what strange utterance did the loud, dry wind blow through my ear? The sky seemed not a sky of earth, and with what motion moved the clouds? Dust as we are, the immortal spirit grows like harmony in music. There is a dark, inscrutable workmanship that reconciles discordant elements, makes them cling together in one society. How strange that all the terrors, pains, and early miseries, regrets, vexations, lassitudes interfused within my mind, should e'er have borne a part, and that a needful part, in making up the calm existence that is mine when I am worthy of myself.
Bomb taken.
Praise to the end, thanks to the means which nature deigned to employ. Whether her fearless visitings or those that came with soft alarm like hurtless light, opening the peaceful clouds,
Bomb
or
taken.
she may use severer interventions, ministry more palpable as best might suit her aim.
Why is he here?
One summer evening, led by her, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree within a rocky cave, its usual home. Straight I unloosed her chain and, stepping in, pushed from the shore. It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure, nor without the voice
Can I
of mountain
leave?
echoes did my boat move on,
Bomb
leaving
armed.
behind her still on either side small circles glittering idly in the
Carrier
moon,
kill.
until they melted all into one track of sparkling
Bomb
light.
taken.
But now, like one who rose, proud of his skill, to reach a chosen point with an unswerving line, I fixed my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge, the horizon's utmost boundary. Far above was nothing but the stars and the grey sky. She was an elfin pinnace. Lustily I dipped my oars into the silent lake, and as I rose upon the stroke, my boat went heaving through the water like a swan, when from behind that craggy steep till then the horizon's bound, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct upreared its head. I struck and struck again, and growing still in stature, the grim shape towered up between me and the stars, and still, for so it seemed, with purpose of its own and measured motion like a living thing, strode after me. With trembling oars I turned, and through the silent water stole my way back to the covert of the willow tree. There in her mooring place I left my bark, and through the meadows homeward went, in grave and serious mood. But after I had seen that spectacle, for many days my brain worked with a dim and undetermined sense of unknown modes of being. O'er my thoughts there hung a darkness, call it solitude or blank desertion. No familiar shapes remained, no pleasant images of trees, of sea or sky, no colours of green fields, but huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men, moved slowly through the mind by day and were a trouble to my dream. Wisdom and spirit of the universe, thou soul that art the eternity of thought, that givest to forms and images a breath and everlasting motion, not in vain, by day or starlight, thus from my first dawn of childhood, didst thou intertwine for me the passions that build up our human soul, not with the mean and vulgar works of man, but with high objects, with enduring things, with life and nature, purifying thus the elements of feeling and of thought, and sanctifying by such discipline both pain and fear, until we recognize a grandeur in the beatings of the heart. Nor was this fellowship vouchsafed to me with stinted kindness. In November days, when vapours rolling down the valley made a lonely scene more lonesome, among woods at noon, and mid the calm of summer nights, when by the margin of the trembling lake, beneath the gloomy hills, homeward I went in solitude, such intercourse was mine. Mine was it in the fields both day and night, by the waters all the summer long. And in the frosty season, when the sun was set and visible for many a mile, the cottage windows blazed through twilight gloom.
Bomb taken.
I heeded not their summons. Happy time it was indeed for all of us. For me it was a time of rapture. Clear and loud the village clock tolled 6. I wheeled about, proud and exulting like an untired horse that cares not for his home. All shod with steel, we hissed along the polished ice in games confederate, imitative of the chase and woodland pleasures. The resounding horn, the pack cloud chiming, and the hunted hare. So through the darkness and the cold we flew, and not a voice was idle. With the din smitten, the precipices rang aloud. The leafless trees and every icy crag tinkled like iron. Our far distant hills into the tumult sent an alien sound of melancholy not unnoticed, while the stars eastward were sparkling clear, and in the west the orange sky of evening died away. Not seldom from the uproar I retired into a silent bay or sportively glanced sideway, leaving the tumultuous throng, to cut across the reflex of a star that fled, and flying still before me gleamed upon the glassy plain.
Bomb army.
And oftentimes, when we had given our bodies to the wind, and all the shadowy banks on either side came sweeping through the darkness, spinning still the rapid line of motion, then at once have I, reclining back upon my heels, stopped short. Yet still the solitary cliffs wheeled by me, even as if the earth had rolled with visible motion her diurnal round.
Ready.
Behind me did they stretch in solemn train, feebler and feebler, and I stood and watched till all was tranquil as a dreamless sleep. Ye presences of nature in the sky and on the earth, ye visions of the hills, and souls of lonely places, and I think a vulgar hope was yours when ye employed such ministry, when ye through many a year haunting me thus among my boyish sports, on caves and trees, on the woods and hills, impressed upon all forms the characters of danger or desire, and thus did make the surface of the universal earth with triumph and delight, with hope and fear, work like a sea. Not uselessly employed might I pursue this theme through every change of exercise and play to which the year did summon us in his delightful round. We were a noisy crew. The sun in heaven beheld not vales more beautiful than ours, nor saw a band in happiness and joy richer or worthier of the ground they trod. I could record with no reluctant voice the woods of autumn and their hazel bowers, with milk-white clusters hung, the rod and line, true symbol of hope's foolishness, whose strong and unreproved enchantment led us on by rocks and pools shut out from every star, all the green summer, to forlorn cascades among the windings hid of mountain brooks, unfading recollections. At this hour the heart is almost mine, with which I felt, from some hilltop on sunny afternoons, the paper kite high among fleecy clouds pull at her rein like an impetuous courser, or from the meadows sent on gusty days beheld her breast the wind, then suddenly dashed headlong or rejected by the storm. Ye lowly cottages wherein we dwelt, a ministration of your own was yours. Can I forget you, being as you were so beautiful among the pleasant fields in which ye stood? Or can I here forget the plain and seemly countenance with which ye dealt out your plain comforts? Yet had ye delights and exultations of your own. Eager and never weary, we pursued our home amusements by the warm peat fire at evening, when with pencil and smooth slate in square divisions parcelled out, and all with crosses and with ciphers scribbled o'er, we schemed and puzzled, head opposed to head, in strife too humble to be named in verse. Around the naked table, snow-white deal, cherry or maple, sat in close array, and to the combat, lue or whist, led on a thick-ribbed army, not as in the world, neglected and ungratefully thrown by even for the very service they had wrought, but husbanded through many a long campaign. Uncouth assemblage was it, where no few had changed their functions. Some plebeian cards, which fate beyond the promise of their birth had dignified and called to represent the persons of departed potentates. Oh, with what echoes on the board they fell! Ironic diamonds, clubs, hearts, diamonds, spades, the congregation piteously akin. Cheap matter offered they to boyish wit, those sooty knaves, precipitated down with scoffs and taunts, like Vulcan out of heaven. Paramount ace, a moon in her eclipse, queens gleaming through their splendour's last decay, and monarchs surly at the wrongs sustained by royal visages. Meanwhile abroad incessant rain was falling, or the frost raged bitterly with keen and silent tooth. And interrupting oft that eager game, from under Esthwaite's splitting fields of ice, the pent-up air, struggling to free itself, gave out to meadow grounds and hills a loud, protracted yelling, like the noise of wolves howling in troops along the Bothnic main. Nor, sedulous as I have been to trace how nature by extrinsic passion first peopled the mind with forms sublime or fair, and made me love them, may I here omit how other pleasures have been mine, and joys of subtler origin, how I have felt, not seldom even in that tempestuous time, those hallowed and pure motions of the sense which seem, in their simplicity, to own an intellectual charm, a calm delight which, if I err not, surely must belong to those first-born affinities that fit our new existence to existing things, and in our dawn of being constitute the bond of union between life and joy. Yes, I remember when the changeful earth and twice 5 summers on my mind had stamped the faces of the moving year. Even then I held unconscious intercourse with beauty old as creation, drinking in a pure organic pleasure from the silver wreaths of curling mist, or from the level plain of waters coloured by impending clouds. The sands of Westmoreland, the creeks and bays of Cumbria's rocky limits, they can tell how, when the sea threw off his evening shade, and to the shepherd's hut on distant hills sent welcome notice of the rising moon, how I have stood, to fancies such as these, a stranger, linking with the spectacle no conscious memory of a kindred sight, and bringing with me no peculiar sense of quietness or peace. Yet have I stood, even while mine eye hath moved o'er many a league of shining water, gathering as it seems through every hairbreadth in that field of light, new pleasure like a bee among the flowers. Thus oft amid those fits of vulgar joy, which through all seasons on a child's pursuits are prompt attendants, Mid that giddy bliss which like a tempest works along the
You're a
blood
little
and
too
is
on point,
forgotten.
boss. Different.
And then I felt gleams
Be
like the
honest.
flashing of a shield. The earth and common face of nature spake to me rememberable things. Sometimes 'tis true by chance collisions and quaint accidents, like those ill-sorted unions, works supposed of evil-minded fairies, yet not vain nor profitless, if haply they impressed collateral objects and appearances, albeit lifeless then, and doomed to sleep until maturer seasons called them forth to impregnate and to elevate the mind.
Taken.
And if the vulgar joy by its own weight wearied itself out of the memory, the scenes which were a witness of that joy remained in their substantial lineaments, depicted on the brain, and to the eye were visible, a daily sight. And thus by the impressive discipline of fear, by pleasure and repeated happiness, so frequently repeated, by force of obscure feelings representative of things forgotten, these same scenes so bright, so beautiful, so majestic in themselves, though yet the day was distant, did become habitually dear, and all their forms and changeful colours by invisible links were fastened to the affections.
Objective income.
I began my story early, not misled, I trust, by an infirmity of love for days disowned by memory, ere the breath of spring planting my snowdrops among winter snows. Nor will it seem to thee, O friend, so prompt in sympathy, that I have lengthened out with fond and feeble tongue a tedious tale. Meanwhile my hope has been that I might fetch invigorating thoughts from former years, might fix the wavering balance of my mind, and haply meet reproaches too, whose power may spur me on, in manhood now mature, to honourable toil. Yet should these hopes prove vain, and thus should neither I be taught to understand myself,
It's a
nor
brightness
thou
thing,
to
a little
know
pixel.
with better knowledge how the
a
heart
pixel.
was framed of him thou lovest. Need I dread from thee harsh judgments, if the song be loath to quit those recollected hours that have the charm of visionary things, those lovely forms and sweet sensations that throw back our life, and almost make remotest infancy a visible scene, on which the sun is shining. One end at least hath been attained, my mind hath been revived, and if this genial mood desert me not, forthwith shall be brought down through later years the story of my life. The road lies plain before me. 'Tis a theme single and of determined bounds, and hence I choose it rather at this time than work of ampler or more varied argument, where I might be discomfited and lost. And certain hopes are with me that to thee this labour will be welcome, honoured friend.
I don't care.
End of section 1.
30 seconds remaining.
Section 2 of The Prelude by William Wordsworth.
That's
This
unfortunate.
LibriVox recording is in the public
That is
domain.
more than unfortunate.
Book
That is
2nd.
more than unfortunate, stranger.
Time
Random
continues.
stranger. It is more than
Thus
unfortunate.
far, O friend, have we, though leaving much
Truly.
unvisited, endeavoured to retrace the simple ways in which my childhood lived.
There we go.
Those chiefly that first led me to the love of rivers,
no.
woods, and fields. The passion yet was in its birth, sustained as might befall by nourishment that
dude.
came unsought. For still, from week to week, from
Get
month
the
to month,
fuck
we lived
out.
a round of tumult. Duly were our games
cannot
prolonged
wait.
in summer till the daylight failed.
Ouch.
No chair remained before the doors. The bench and threshold
That
steps
eraser
were
that
empty.
you have there,
Fast
little
asleep the
s- little
labourer,
squeegee.
and the old man who had sat
My
a later
dude.
lingerer.
Get it
Yet
out.
Revelry continued and the loud uproar. At last, when all the ground was dark and twinkling stars edged the black clouds, home and to bed we went, feverish with weary joints and beating minds. Ah, is there one who ever has been young, nor needs a warning voice to tame the pride of intellect and virtue's self-esteem? One is there, though the wisest and the best of all
My dude, it is like whiplash on a micro level, is what they're doing. My dude, I do not give a fuck about this crying girl. I don't know how many times I have to tell you. Truly, I'm going to keep doing something about this until you remove this woman. Snoke, the heartbeat down there. Truly, get out. You're a little bitch. I don't know what else to tell you. Me, Beaker. Truly, you are an idiot. Truly.
Mankind, who covets not at times union that cannot be, who would not give, if so he might, to duty and to truth the eagerness of infantine desire. The tranquilizing spirit presses now on my corporeal frame, so wide appears the vacancy between me and those days which yet have such self-presence in my mind, that musing on them often do I seem two consciousnesses, conscious of myself and of some other being, a rude mass of native rock, left midway in the square of our small market village, was the goal or centre of these sports, and when returned after long absence, thither I repaired. Gone was the old grey stone, and in its place a smart assembly room usurped the ground that had been ours. There let the fiddles scream, and be ye happy. Yet, my friends, I know that more than one of you will think with me of those soft starry nights, and that old dame from whom the stone was named, who there had sat, and watched her table with its huckster's wares, assiduous, through the length of 60 years. He ran a boisterous course, the year span round with giddy motion, but the time approached that brought with it a regular desire for calmer pleasures, when the winning forms of nature were collaterally attached to every scheme of holiday delight, and every boyish sport, less grateful else and languidly pursued. When summer came, our pastime was, on bright half-holidays, to sweep along the plain of Windermere with rival oars, and the selected bourne was now an island musical with birds that sang and ceased not. Now a sister isle beneath the oak's umbrageous covert, sown with lilies of the valley like a field, and now a third small island, where survived in solitude the ruins of a shrine once to Our Lady dedicate, and served daily with chanted rites. In such a race, so ended, disappointment could be none, uneasiness or pain or jealousy. We rested in the shade, all pleased alike, conquered and conqueror. Thus the pride of strength and the vainglory of superior skill were tempered. Thus was gradually produced a quiet independence of the heart. And to my friend who knows me I may add, fearless of blame, that hence for future days ensued a diffidence and modesty, and I was taught to feel, perhaps too much, the self-sufficing power of solitude. Our daily meals were frugal, sabine fare. More than we wished, we knew the blessing then of vigorous hunger, hence corporeal strength unsapped by delicate viands. For exclude a little weekly stipend, and we lived through 3 divisions of the ported year in penniless poverty. But now to school from the half-yearly holidays returned, we came with weightier purses that sufficed to furnish treats more costly than the dame of the old grey stone from her scant board supplied. Hence rustic dinners on the cool green ground, or in the woods, or by a riverside or shady fountains, while among the leaves soft airs were stirring, and the midday sun unfelt shone brightly round us in our joy. Nor is my aim neglected if I tell how sometimes in the length of those half years we from our funds drew largely, proud to curb and eager to spur on the galloping steed, and with the courteous innkeeper whose stud supplied our want, we happily might employ sly subterfuge if the adventure's bound were distant, some famed temple where of yore the Druids worshipped, and the antique walls of that large abbey where within the veil of nightshade to St. Mary's honour built stands yet a mouldering pile with fractured arch, belfry and images, and living trees, a holy scene. Along the smooth green turf our horses grazed. To more than inland peace left by the west wind sweeping overhead from a tumultuous ocean, trees and towers in that sequestered valley may be seen, both silent and both motionless alike. Such the deep shelter that is there, and such the safeguard for repose and quietness. Our steeds remounted and the summons given, with whip and spur we through the chauntry flew in uncouth race, and left the cross-legged knight and the stone abbot and that single wren which one day sang so sweetly in the nave of the old church that, though from recent showers the earth was comfortless, and touched by faint internal breezes, sobbings of the place and respirations, in the roofless walls the shuddering ivy dripped large drops, yet still so sweetly mid the gloom the invisible bird sang to herself, that there I could have made my dwelling place, and lived forever there to hear such music. Through the walls we flew, and down the valley, and a circuit made in wantonness of heart, through rough and smooth we scampered homewards. O ye rocks and streams, and that still spirit shed from evening air! Even in this joyous time I sometimes felt your presence, when with slackened step we breathed along the sides of the steep hills, or when lighted by gleams of moonlight from the sea we beat with thundering hoofs the level sand. Midway on Long Winander's eastern shore, within the crescent of a pleasant bay, a tavern stood, no homely featured house, primeval like its neighbouring cottages, but 'twas a splendid place, the door beset with chaises, grooms, and liveries, and within decanters, glasses, and the blood-red wine. In ancient times, and ere the hall was built on the large island, had this dwelling been more worthy of a poet's love, a hut proud of its own bright fire and sycamore shade. But though the rhymes were gone that once inscribed the threshold, and large golden characters spread o'er the spangled signboard had dislodged the old line and usurped his place in slight and mockery of the rustic painter's hand, yet to this hour the spot to me is dear with all its foolish pomp. The garden lay upon a slope surmounted by a plain of a small bowling green. Beneath us stood a grove with gleams of water through the trees and over the treetops. Nor did we want refreshment, strawberries and mellow cream.
Way to
There, while through half an afternoon we played on the smooth platform, whether skill prevailed or happy blunder triumphed, bursts of glee made all the mountains ring. But, ere nightfall, when in our pinnace we returned at leisure over the shadowy lake, to the beach of some small island steered our course we won, the minstrel of the troop, and left him there, and rode off gently while he blew his flute alone upon the rock. Oh, then the calm and dead still water lay upon my mind, even with a weight of pleasure, and the sky, never before so beautiful, sank down into my heart and held me like a dream. Thus were my sympathies enlarged, and thus daily the common range of visible things grew dear to me. Already I began to love the sun. Boy, I loved the sun, not as I since have loved him, as a pledge and surety of our earthly life, a light which we behold and feel we are alive, nor for his bounty to so many worlds, but for this cause, that I had seen him lay his beauty on the morning hills,
That's why Grant
had
told you
seen the
to,
western
do that.
mountain touch his setting orb, in many a thoughtless hour, when from excess of happiness my blood appeared to flow for its own pleasure, and I breathed with joy. And from like feelings, humble though intense, to patriotic and domestic love analogous, the moon to me was dear, for I could dream away my purposes, standing to gaze upon her while she hung midway between the hills, as if she knew no other region, but belonged to thee, yea, appertained by a peculiar right to thee and thy grey huts, thou one dear vale. Those incidental charms which first attached my heart to rural objects, day by day grew weaker, and I hasten on to tell how nature, intervenient till this time, and secondary, now at length was sought for her own sake. But who shall parcel out his intellect by geometric rules, split like a province into round and square? Who knows the individual hour in which his habits were first sown, even as a seed? Who that shall point as with a wand and say, this portion of the river of my mind came from yon fountain? Thou, my friend, art one more deeply read in thy own thoughts. To thee science appears but what in truth she is, not as our glory and our absolute boast, but as a succedaneum and a prop to our infirmity. No officious slave art thou of that false secondary power by which we multiply distinctions. Then deem that our puny boundaries are things that we perceive, and not that we have made. To thee, unblinded by these formal arts, the unity of all hath been revealed, and thou wilt doubt, with me less aptly skilled than many are to range the faculties in scale and order, class the cabinet of their sensations, and in voluble phrase run through the history and birth of each as of a single independent thing. Hard task, vain hope, to analyze the mind, if each most obvious and particular thought, not in a mystical and idle sense, but in the words of reason deeply weighed, hath no beginning. Blessed the infant babe, for with my best conjecture I would trace our being's earthly progress. Blessed the babe, nursed in his mother's arms, who sinks to sleep rocked on his mother's breast, who with his soul drinks in the feelings of his mother's eye. For him, in one dear presence, there exists a virtue which irradiates and exalts objects through widest intercourse of sense. No outcast he, bewildered and depressed. Along his infant veins are interfused the gravitation and the filial bond of nature that connect him with the world. Is there a flower to which he points with hand too weak to gather it? Already love drawn from love's purest earthly fount for him hath beautified that flower. Already shades of pity from inward tenderness do fall around him upon aught that bears unsightly marks of violence or harm. Emphatically such a being lives, frail creature as he is, helpless as frail, an inmate of this active universe. For feeling has to him imparted power that through the growing faculties of sense doth like an agent of the one great mind create, creator and receiver both, working but in alliance with the works which it beholds. Such verily is the first poetic spirit of our human life. By uniform control of after years, in most abated or suppressed, in some through every change of growth and of decay, preeminent and death. From early days, beginning not long after that first time in which, a babe, by intercourse of touch I held mute dialogues with my mother's heart, I have endeavoured to display the means whereby this infant sensibility, great birthright of our being, was in me augmented and sustained, yet is a path more difficult before me, and I fear that in its broken windings we shall need the chamois' sinews and the eagle's wings. Now a trouble came into my mind from unknown causes. I was left alone seeking the visible world, nor knowing why. Props of my affections were removed, and yet the building stood as if sustained by its own spirit. All that I beheld was dear, and hence to finer influxes the mind lay open to a more exact and close communion. Many are our joys in youth, but oh, what happiness to live when every hour brings palpable access of knowledge, when all knowledge is delight, and sorrow is not there. The seasons came, and every season wheresoe'er I moved unfolded transitory qualities, which, but for this most watchful power of love, had been neglected, left a register of permanent relations, else unknown. Hence life and change and beauty, solitude more active even than best society. Society made sweet as solitude by silent inobtrusive sympathies, and gentle agitations of the mind from manifold distinctions, difference perceived in things where, to the unwatchful eye, no difference is, and hence from the same source sublimer joy. For I would walk alone under the quiet stars, and at that time have felt whate'er there is of power in sounds to breathe an elevated mood, by form or image unprofaned. I would stand, if the night blackened with the coming storm, beneath some rock, listening to notes that are the ghostly language of the ancient earth, or make their dim abode in distant winds. Thence did I drink the visionary power, and deem not profitless those fleeting moods of shadowy exaltation. Not for this, that they are kindred to our purer mind and intellectual life, but that the soul, remembering how she felt, but what she felt, remembering not, retains an obscure sense of possible sublimity, whereto with growing faculties she doth aspire, with faculties still growing, feeling still that whatsoever point they gain, they yet have something to pursue. And not alone mid gloom and tumult, but no less mid fair and tranquil scenes, that universal power and fitness in the latent qualities and essences of things by which the mind is moved with feelings of delight, to me came, strengthened with a superadded soul, a virtue not its own. My morning walks were early. Oft before the hours of school I travelled round our little lake, 5 miles of pleasant wandering. Happy time, more dear for this, that one was by my side, a friend then passionately loved. With heart how full would he peruse these lines. For many years have since flowed in between us, and our minds both silent to each other, that this time we live as if those hours had never been. Nor seldom did I lift our cottage latch far earlier ere one smoke wreath had risen from human dwelling, or the vernal thrush was audible, and sat among the woods alone upon some jutting eminence, at the first gleam of dawn-light, when the vale, yet slumbering, lay in utter solitude. How shall I seek the origin? Where find faith in the marvellous things which then I felt? Oft in these moments such a holy calm would overspread my soul, that bodily eyes were utterly forgotten, and what I saw appeared like something in myself, a dream, a prospect in the mind. 'Twere long to tell what spring and autumn, what the winter snows, and what the summer shade, what day and night, evening and morning, sleep and waking, thought from sources inexhaustible, poured forth to feed the spirit of religious love in which I walked with nature. But let this be not forgotten, that I still retained my first creative sensibility, that by the regular action of the world my soul was unsubdued, a plastic power abode with me, a forming hand at times rebellious, acting in a devious mood, a local spirit of his own, at war with general tendency, but for the most subservient strictly to external things with which it communed. An auxiliar light came from my mind, which on the setting sun bestowed new splendour. The melodious birds, the fluttering breezes, fountains that run on murmuring so sweetly in themselves, obeyed a like dominion, and the midnight storm grew darker in the presence of my eye. Hence my obeisance, my devotion hence, and hence my transport. Nor should this perchance pass unrecorded, that I still had loved the exercise and produce of a toil, than analytic industry to me more pleasing, and whose character I deem is more poetic as resembling more creative agency. The song would speak of that interminable building reared by observation of affinities in objects where no brotherhood exists to passive minds. My 17th year was come, and whether from this habit rooted now so deeply in my mind, or from excess in the great social principle of life coercing all things into sympathy, to unorganic natures were transferred my own enjoyments. or the power of truth coming in revelation did converse with things that really are. I at this time saw blessings spread around me like a sea. Thus while the days flew by and years passed on, from nature and her overflowing soul I had received so much that all my thoughts were steeped in feeling. I was only then contented when with bliss ineffable I felt the sentiment of being spread o'er all that moves and all that seemeth still, or all that, lost beyond the reach of thought and human knowledge, to the human eye invisible, yet liveth to the heart, or all that leaps and runs, and shouts and sings, and beats the gladsome air, or all that glides beneath the wave, yea, in the wave itself, and mighty depth of waters. Wonder not, if high the transport, great the joy I felt, communing in this sort through earth and heaven with every form of creature, as it looked towards the uncreated with a countenance of adoration, with an eye of love. One song they sang, and it was audible, most audible then, when the fleshly ear, o'ercome by humblest prelude of that strain, forgot her functions and slept undisturbed. If this be error, and another faith find easier access to the pious mind, yet were I grossly destitute of all those human sentiments that make this earth so dear, if I should fail with grateful voice to speak of you, ye mountains, and ye lakes, and sounding cataracts, ye mists and winds that dwell among the hills where I was born. If in my youth I have been pure in heart, if mingling with the world I am content with my own modest pleasures, and have lived with God and nature communing, removed from little enmities and low desires, the gift is yours. If in these times of fear this melancholy waste of hopes o'erthrown, if mid indifference and apathy and wicked exultation when good men on every side fall off, we know not how, to selfishness, disguised in gentle names of peace and quiet and domestic love, yet mingled not unwillingly with sneers on visionary minds, if in this time of dereliction and dismay, I yet despair not of our nature, but retain a more than Roman confidence, a faith that fails not, in all sorrow my support, the blessing of my life. The gift is yours, ye winds and sounding cataracts. 'Tis yours, ye mountains. Thine, O nature. Thou hast fed my lofty speculations. And in thee, for this uneasy heart of ours, I find a never-failing principle of joy and purest passion. Thou, my friend, wert reared in the great city, mid far other scenes. We by different roads at length have gained the self-same bourne, and for this cause to thee I speak, unapprehensive of contempt, the insinuated scoff of coward tongues, and all that silent language which so oft in conversation between man and man blots from the human countenance all trace of beauty and of love. For thou hast sought the truth in solitude, and since the days that gave thee liberty, full long desired, to serve in nature's temple, thou hast been the most assiduous of her ministers. In many things my brother, chiefly here in this our deep devotion. Fare thee well, health and the quiet of a healthful mind attend thee, seeking oft the haunts of men, and yet more often living with thyself. And for thyself so haply shall thy days be many, and a blessing to mankind.
Double kill.
End of section 2.
Pause it right there.
Section 3.
I think you wanted me to go to Magic. I will. I'll at least play it. Time to relax a little bit. This cat threat.
Of the Prelude by William Wordsworth. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Book
Never
3rd.
mind.
Residence at Cambridge. It was a dreary morning when the wheels rolled over a wide plain o'erhung with clouds, and nothing cheered our way till first we saw the long-roofed chapel of King's College lift turrets and pinnacles in answering files, extended high above a dusky grove. Advancing, we espied upon the road a student clothed in gown and tasselled cap, striding along as if o'ertasked by time, covetous of exercise and air. He passed, nor was I master of my eyes till he was left an arrow's flight behind. As nearer and nearer to the spot we drew, it seemed to suck us in with an eddy's force. Onward we drove beneath the castle, caught while crossing Magdalen Bridge a glimpse of Cam, and at the Hoop alighted, famous inn. My spirit was up, my thoughts were full of hope. Some friends I had, acquaintances who there seemed friends, poor simple schoolboys, now hung round with honour and importance. In a world of welcome faces up and down I roved. Questions, directions, warnings and advice flowed in upon me from all sides, fresh day of pride and pleasure. To myself I seemed a man of business and expense, and went from shop to shop about my own affairs, to tutor or to tailor, as befell from street to street with loose and careless mind. I was the dreamer, they the dream. I roamed delighted through the motley spectacle. Gowns, grave or gaudy, doctors, students, streets, courts, cloisters, flocks of churches, gateways, towers, migration strange for a stripling of the hills, a northern villager, as if the change had waited on some fairy's wand. Once behold me rich in moneys, and attired in splendid garb, with hose of silk, and hair powdered like rimy trees when frost is keen. My lordly dressing gown I pass it by, with other signs of manhood that supplied the lack of beard. The weeks went roundly on, with invitations, suppers, wine and fruit, smooth housekeeping within, and all without liberal and suiting gentleman's array. The evangelist St. John my patron was. 3 Gothic courts are his, and in the first was my abiding place, a nook obscure. Right underneath, the college kitchens made a humming sound, less tunable than bees, but hardly less industrious, with shrill notes of sharp command and scolding intermixed. Near me hung Trinity's loquacious clock, who never let the quarters, night or day, slip by him unproclaimed, and told the hours twice over with a male and female voice. The pealing organ was my neighbour too, and from my pillow looking forth by light of moon or favouring stars, I could behold the antechapel where the statue stood of Newton with his prism and silent face, the marble index of a mind forever voyaging through strange seas of thought, alone. Of college labours, of the lecturer's room, all studded round as thick as chairs could stand, with loyal students faithful to their books, half and half idlers, hardy recusants, and honest dunces, of important days, examinations when the man was weighed as in a balance, of excessive hopes, tremblings withal, and commendable fears, small jealousies, and triumphs, good or bad. Let others that know more speak as they know. Such glory was but little sought by me, and little won. Yet from the first crude days of settling time in this untried abode, I was disturbed at times by prudent thoughts, wishing to hope without a hope, some fears about my future worldly maintenance, and more than all a strangeness in the mind, a feeling that I was not for that hour, nor for that place. But wherefore be cast down? For, not to speak of reason and her pure reflective acts to fix the moral law deep in the conscience, nor of Christian hope, bowing her head before her sister faith, as one far mightier, hither I had come, bear witness truth, endowed with holy powers and faculties, whether to work or feel. Oft when the dazzling show no longer new had ceased to dazzle, oft times did I quit my comrades, leave the crowd, buildings and groves, and as I paced alone the level fields, far from those lovely sights and sounds sublime with which I had been conversant, the mind drooped not, but there into herself returning with prompt rebound seemed fresh as heretofore. At least I more distinctly recognized her native instincts. Let me dare to speak a higher language, say that now I felt what independent solaces were mine, to mitigate the injurious sway of place or circumstance, how far soever changed in youth or to be changed in manhood's prime. Or for the few who shall be called to look on the long shadows in our evening years, ordained precursors to the night of death. As if awakened, summoned, roused, constrained, I looked for universal things, perused the common countenance of earth and sky. Earth nowhere unembellished by some trace of that first paradise whence man was driven, and sky whose beauty and bounty are expressed by the proud name she bears, the name of heaven. I called on both to teach me what they might, or turning the mind in upon herself, poured, watched, expected, listened, spread my thoughts, and spread them with a wider creeping, felt incumbencies more awful, visitings of the upholder of the tranquil soul, that tolerates the indignities of time, and from the centre of eternity, all finite motions overruling, lives in glory immutable. But peace, enough here to record that I was mounting now to such community with highest truth, a track pursuing, not untrod before, from strict analogies by thought supplied, or consciousnesses not to be subdued. To every natural form, rock, fruit or flower, even the loose stones that cover the highway, I gave a moral life. I saw them feel, or linked them to some feeling. The great mass lay bedded in a quickening soul, and all that I beheld respired with inward meaning. Add that whate'er of terror or of love, or beauty, nature's daily face put on from transitory passion, unto this I was as sensitive as waters are to the sky's influence in a kindred mood of passion, was obedient as a lute that waits upon the touches of the wind. Unknown, unthought of, yet I was most rich. I had a world about me. It was my own. I made it, for it only lived to me, and to the God who sees into the heart.
Might have to shake it a little
Such
bit.
sympathies, though rarely, were betrayed by outward gestures and by visible looks. Some called it madness. So indeed it was, if childlike fruitfulness in passing joy, if steady moods of thoughtfulness matured to inspiration, sought with such a name. If prophecy be madness, if things viewed by poets in
what
old
are you
time
getting?
and higher up by the first men, earth's first inhabitants, may in these tutored days no more be seen with undisordered sight. But leaving this, it was no madness, for the bodily eye amid my strongest workings evermore was searching out the lines of difference as they lie hid in all external forms, near or remote, minute or vast, an eye which from a tree, a stone, a withered leaf, to the broad ocean and the azure heavens, spangled with kindred multitudes of stars, could find no surface where its power might sleep, which spake perpetual logic to my soul, and by an unrelenting agency did bind my feelings even as in a chain. And here, O friend, have I retraced my life up to an eminence, and told a tale of matters which not falsely may be called the glory of my youth. Of genius, power, creation, and divinity itself I have been speaking, for my theme has been what passed within me, not of outward things done visibly for other minds, words, signs, symbols, or actions, but of my own heart have I been speaking, and my youthful mind. O heavens, how awful is the might of souls, and what they do within themselves while yet the yoke of earth is new to them, the world nothing but a wild field where they were sown. This is in truth heroic argument, this genuine prowess, which I wished to touch with hand however weak, but in the main it lies far hidden from the reach of words. Points have we all of us within our souls, where all stand single. This I feel, and make breathings for incommunicable powers. But is not each a memory to himself? And therefore now that we must quit this theme, I am not heartless, for there's not a man that lives who hath not known his godlike hours, and feels not what an empire we inherit as natural beings in the strength of nature. No more, for now into a populous plain we must descend. A traveller I am, whose tale is only of himself. Even so be it, if the pure of heart be prompt to follow, and if thou, my honoured friend, who in these thoughts art ever at my side, support as heretofore my fainting steps. It hath been told that when the first delight that flashed upon me from this novel show had failed, the mind returned into herself. Yet true it is that I had made a change in climate, and my nature's outward coat changed also slowly and insensibly. Full oft the quiet and exalted thoughts of loneliness gave way to empty noise and superficial pastimes, now and then forced labour, and more frequently forced hopes, and worst of all a treasonable growth of indecisive judgments that impaired and shook the mind's simplicity. And yet this was a gladsome time. Could I behold, who less insensible than sodden clay in a sea river's bed at ebb of tide could have beheld, with undelighted heart, so many happy youths, so wide and fair a congregation in its budding time of health and hope and beauty, all at once so many diverse samples from the growth of life's sweet season, could have seen unmoved that miscellaneous garland of wild flowers decking the matron temples of a place so famous through the world? To me, at least, it was a goodly prospect, for in sooth, though I had learnt betimes to stand unpropped, and independent musings pleased me so that spells seemed on me when I was alone, yet could I only cleave to solitude in lonely places. If a throng was near, that way I leaned by nature, for my heart was social and loved idleness and joy. Not seeking those who might participate my deeper pleasures, nay, I had not once, though not unused to mutter lonesome songs, even with myself divided such delight, or looked that way for aught that might be clothed in human language. Easily I passed from the remembrances of better things, and slipped into the ordinary works of careless youth, unburthened, unalarmed. Caverns there were within my mind which sun could never penetrate, yet did there not want store of leafy arbours where the light might enter in at will. Companionships, friendships, acquaintances were welcome all. We sauntered, played, or rioted. We talked unprofitable talk at morning hours, drifted about along the streets and walks, read lazily in trivial books, went forth to gallop through the country in blind zeal of senseless horsemanship, or on the breast of Cam sailed boisterously, and let the stars come forth, perhaps without one quiet thought. Such was the tenor of the second act in this new life. Imagination slept, yet not utterly. I could not print ground where the grass had yielded to the steps of generations of illustrious men unmoved. I could not always lightly pass through the same gateways, sleep where they had slept, wake where they waked, range that enclosure old, that garden of great intellect undisturbed. Place also by the side of this dark sense of noble feeling that those spiritual men, even the great Newton's own ethereal self, seemed humbled in these precincts thence to be the more endeared, their several memories here, even like their persons in their portraits clothed with the accustomed garb of daily life, put on a lowly and a touching grace, of more distinct humanity that left all genuine admiration unimpaired. Beside the pleasant mill of Trumpington, I laughed with Chaucer in the hawthorn shade, heard him, while birds were warbling, tell his tales of amorous passion, and that gentle bard, chosen by the muses for their page of state, sweet Spenser, moving through his clouded heaven with the moon's beauty and the moon's soft pace. I called him brother, Englishman, friend. Yea, our blind poet, who in his later days stood almost single, uttering odious truth, darkness before and danger's voice behind, soul awful, if the earth has ever lodged an awful soul. I seemed to see him here familiarly, and in his scholar's dress bounding before me, yet a stripling youth. A boy, no better, with his rosy cheeks angelical, keen eye, courageous look, and conscious step of purity and pride. Among the band of my compeers was one whom chance had stationed in the very room honoured by Milton's name, O temperate bard, be it confessed that for the first time seated within thy innocent lodge and oratory, one of a festive circle, I poured out libations, to thy memory drank, till pride and gratitude grew dizzy in a brain never excited by the fumes of wine before that hour, or since. And forth I ran from the assembly, through a length of streets, ran ostrich-like to reach our chapel door in not a desperate or opprobrious time, albeit long after the importunate bell had stopped, with wearisome Cassandra voice no longer haunting the dark winter night. Call back, O friend, a moment to thy mind, the place itself and fashion of the rites. With careless ostentation shouldering up my surplice, through the inferior throng I clove of the plain burghers, who in audience stood on the last skirts of their permitted ground, under the pealing organ. Empty thoughts, I am ashamed of them, and that great bard, and thou, O friend, who in thy ample mind hast placed me high above my best deserts. Ye will forgive the weakness of that hour in some of its unworthy vanities, brother to many more. In this mixed sort the months passed on remissly, not given up to wilful alienation from the right, or walks of open scandal, but in vague and loose indifference, easy likings, aims of a low pitch, duty and zeal
Good
dismissed,
call.
yet nature or a happy course of things not doing in their stead the needful work. The memory languidly revolved, the heart reposed in noontide rest, the inner pulse of contemplation almost failed to beat. Such life might not inaptly be compared to a floating island, an amphibious spot unsound, of spongy texture, yet withal not wanting a fair face of water-weeds and pleasant flowers. The thirst of living praise, fit reverence for the glorious dead, the sight of those long vistas, sacred catacombs, where mighty minds lie visibly entombed, have often stirred the heart of youth, and bred a fervent love of rigorous discipline. Alas, such high emotion touched not me. Look, was there none within these walls to shame my easy spirits, and discountenance their light composure, far less to instil a calm resolve of mind, firmly addressed to puissant efforts. Nor was this the blame of others but my own. I should, in truth, as far as doth concern my single self, misdeem most widely, lodging it elsewhere. For I, bred up mid nature's luxuries, was a spoilt child, and rambling like the wind, as I had done in daily intercourse with those crystalline rivers, solemn heights, and mountains, ranging like a fowl of the air. I was ill-tutored for captivity. To quit my pleasure, and from month to month take up a station calmly on the perch of sedentary peace. Those lovely forms had also left less space within my mind, which, wrought upon instinctively, had found a freshness in those objects of her love, a winning power beyond all other power. Not that I slighted books, that were to lack all sense, but other passions in me ruled, passions more fervent, making me less prompt to indoor study than was wise or well, or suited to those years. Yet I, though used in magisterial liberty to rove, culling such flowers of learning as might tempt a random choice, could shadow forth a place, if now I yield not to a flattering dream, whose studious aspect should have bent me down to instantaneous service, should at once have made me pay to science and to arts and written law, acknowledged my liege lord, the homage frankly offered up, like that which I had paid to nature. Toil and pains in this recess by thoughtful fancy built should spread from heart to heart, and stately groves, majestic edifices should not want a corresponding dignity within. The congregating temper that pervades our unripe years, not wasted, should be taught to minister to works of high attempt, works which the enthusiast would perform with love. Youth should be awed, religiously possessed with the conviction of the power that waits on knowledge, when sincerely sought and prized for its own sake, on glory and on praise, if but by labour won, and fit to endure the passing day. Should learn to put aside her trappings here, should strip them off abashed before antiquity and steadfast truth, and strong book-mindedness, and over all a healthy sound simplicity should reign. a seemly plainness, name it what you will, republican or pious. If these thoughts are a gratuitous emblazonry that mocks the recreant age we live in, then be folly and false seeming free to effect whatever formal gate of discipline shall raise them highest in their own esteem. Let them parade among the schools at will, but spare the house of God. Was ever known the witless shepherd who persists to drive a flock that thirsts not to a pool disliked? The weight must surely hang on days begun and ended with such mockery. Be wise, ye presidents and deans, and till the spirit of ancient times revive, and youth be trained at home in pious service, to your bells give seasonable rest, for 'tis a sound hollow as ever vexed the tranquil air, and your officious doings bring disgrace on the plain steeples of our English church, whose worship mid remotest village trees suffers for this. Even science, too, at hand in daily sight of this irreverence, is smitten thence with an unnatural taint, loses her just authority, falls beneath collateral suspicion, else unknown. This truth escaped me not, and I confess that having mid my native hills given loose to a schoolboy's vision, I had raised a pile upon the basis of the coming time, that fell in ruins round me. Oh, what joy to see a sanctuary for our country's youth informed with such a spirit as might be its own protection. A primeval grove, where though the shades with cheerfulness were filled, nor indigent of songs warbled from crowds in under coverts, yet the countenance of the whole place should bear a stamp of awe, a habitation sober and demure for ruminating creatures, a domain for quiet things to wander in, a haunt in which the heron should delight to feed by the shy rivers, and the pelican upon the cypress spire in lonely thought might sit and sun himself. Alas, alas, in vain for such solemnity I looked. Mine eyes were crossed by butterflies, ears vexed by chattering popinjays, the inner heart seemed trivial, and the impresses without of a too gaudy region. Different sights those venerable doctors saw of old, when all who dwelt within these famous walls led in abstemiousness a studious life, when in forlorn and naked chambers cooped and crowded o'er the ponderous books they hung like caterpillars eating out their way in silence, or with keen devouring noise not to be tracked or fathered. Princes then at matins froze, and couched at curfew time, trained up through piety and zeal to prize spare diet, patient labour, and plain weeds. O seat of arts, renowned throughout the world, far different service in those homely days the Muses' modest nurslings underwent from their first childhood. In that glorious time, when learning like a stranger come from far, sounding through Christian lands her trumpet, roused peasant and king, when boys and youths, the growth of ragged villages and crazy huts, forsook their homes, and errant in the quest of patron, famous school, or friendly nook, where, pensioned they in shelter might sit down, from town to town and through wide scattered realms journeyed with ponderous folios in their hands, and often starting from some covert place saluted the chance comer on the road, crying, "An obolus, a penny give to a poor scholar," when illustrious men, lovers of truth, by penury constrained, Bucer, Erasmus, or Melanchthon, read before the doors or windows of their cells by moonshine through mere lack of taper light. But peace to vain regrets. We see but darkly even when we look behind us, and the best things are not so pure by nature that they needs must keep to all, as fondly all believe, their highest promise. If the mariner, when at reluctant distance he hath passed some tempting island, could but know the ills that must have fallen upon him had he brought his bark to land upon the wished-for shore, good cause would oft be his to thank the surf whose white belt scared him thence, or winds that blew inexorably adverse. For myself I grieve not, happy is the gowned youth who only misses what I missed, who falls no lower than I fell. I did not love, judging not ill perhaps, the timid course of our scholastic studies.
Thank you. Move on to magic, even though I'm doing pretty good. I'm feeling magic though, honestly. No? Hold on.
could have wished to see the river flow with ampler range and freer pace. But more, far more, I grieved to see displayed among an eager few, who in the field of contest persevered, passions unworthy of youth's generous heart and mounting spirit, pitiably repaid when so disturbed whatever palms are won. From these I turned to travel with the shoal of more unthinking natures, easy minds and pillowy, yet not wanting love that makes the day pass lightly on, when foresight sleeps and wisdom and the pledges interchanged with our own inner being are forgot. Yet was this deep vacation not given up to utter waste. Hitherto I had stood in my own mind remote from social life, at least from what we commonly so name, like a lone shepherd on a promontory who, lacking occupation, looks far forth into the boundless sea, and rather makes than finds what he beholds. And sure it is that this first transit from the smooth delights and wild outlandish walks of simple youth to something that resembles an approach towards human business, to a privileged world within a world, a midway residence with all its intervenient imagery, did better suit my visionary mind, far better than to have been bolted forth, thrust out abruptly into fortune's way, among the conflicts of substantial life. By a more just gradation did lead on to higher things, more naturally matured, for permanent possession, better fruits, whether of truth or virtue, to ensue.
Let me play for a bit before I start this up. I'm cooking food right now, so as this tornado goes through. Oh, yeah?
In serious mood, but oftener, I confess, with playful zest of fancy, did we note, how could we less, the manners and the ways of those who lived distinguished by the badge of good or ill report, or those with whom by frame of academic discipline we were perforce connected, men whose sway and known authority of office served to set our minds on edge, and did no more. Nor wanted we rich pastime of this kind, found everywhere, but chiefly in the ring of the grave elders, men unsecured, grotesque in character, tricked out like aged trees, which through the lapse of their infirmity give ready place to any random seed that chooses to be reared upon their trunks. Here on my view, confronting vividly those shepherd swains whom I had lately left, appeared a different aspect of old age. How different, yet both distinctly marked, objects embossed to catch the general eye, or portraitures for special use designed, as some might seem, so aptly do they serve to illustrate nature's book of rudiments, that book upheld us with maternal care when she would enter on her tender scheme of teaching comprehension with delight, and mingling playful with pathetic thoughts.
Capture the flag.
The surfaces of artificial life and manners finely wrought, the delicate race of colours lurking, gleaming up and down through that state arras, woven with silk and gold. This wily interchange of snaky hues, willingly or unwillingly revealed, I neither knew nor cared for, and as such were wanting here, I took what might be found of less elaborate fabric. At this day I smile, in many a mountain solitude, conjuring up scenes as obsolete in freaks of character, in points of wit as broad, as aught by wooden images performed for entertainment of the gaping crowd at wake or fair. And oftentimes do flit remembrances before me of old men, old humorists who have been long in their graves, and having almost in my mind put off their human names, have into phantoms passed of texture midway between life and books. To play the loiter, it is enough to note that here in dwarf proportions were expressed the limbs of the great world, its eager strifes collaterally portrayed, as in mock fight, a tournament of blows, some hardly dealt, though short of mortal combat, and whate'er might in this pageant be supposed to hit an artless rustic's notice, this way less, more that way, was not wasted upon me. And yet the spectacle may well demand a more substantial name, no mimic show, itself a living part of a live whole, a creek in the vast sea. For all degrees and shapes of spurious fame and short-lived praise here sat in state, and fed with daily alms retainers won away from solid good. And here was labour, his own bond-slave, hope that never set the pains against the prize, idleness halting with his weary clog, and poor misguided shame, and witless fear, and simple pleasure foraging for death, honor misplaced and dignity astray, feuds, factions, flatteries, enmity, and guile, murmuring submission, and bald government, the idle weak as the idolater, and decency and custom starving truth, and blind authority beating with his staff the child that might have led him, emptiness followed as of good omen, and meek worth left to herself unheard of and unknown. Of these and other kindred notices I cannot say what portion is in truth the naked recollection of that time, and what may rather have been called to life by after meditation. But delight, that in an easy temper lulled asleep, is still with innocence its own reward. This was not wanting. Carelessly I roamed as through a wide museum from whose stores a casual rarity is singled out and has its brief perusal, then gives way to others all supplanted in their turn. Amid this crowded neighbourhood of things that are by nature most unneighbourly, the head turns round and cannot right itself, and though an aching and a barren sense of gay confusion still be uppermost, with few wise longings and but little love, yet to the memory something cleaves at last, whence profit may be drawn in times to come. Thus in submissive idleness, my friend, the labouring time of autumn, winter, spring, 8 months, rolled pleasingly away. The 9th came and returned me to my native hills. End of section 3.
Or not. Dude, is this dude that big of a bitch?
Section 4 of the Prelude
Is this dude
by
that
William
big of a
Wordsworth.
bitch?
This
Is
LibriVox
this
recording
dude
is in the
that
public
big of a
domain.
bitch?
Book 4th. Summer Vacation.
Truly, I mean what I say.
Bright was the summer's noon when quickening steps followed
There he
each other
goes.
till a
Get that
dreary
stinks of
moor
bullshit
was
off me.
crossed.
I mean what
Bare
I say.
ridge clomb, upon whose top, standing alone, was from a rampart's edge, I overlooked the bed of
Okay,
Windermere.
so you understand me.
The vast
You tried
river
killing me in the
stretching
private
in
of
the
my
sun.
home. You should probably shut the fuck
With
up.
exultation
I mean
at
now.
my feet I saw lake, islands,
going
promontories,
nowhere,
gleaming
bitch.
bays. The universe of nature's fairest forms, proudly revealed with
It
instantaneous
is,
pose.
yeah, oh yeah.
Magnificent and beautiful and gay. bounded
Keep it
down
up.
the hill shouting amain for the old ferryman.
Okay.
To the shout the rocks replied. And when the
There's
Charon of the flood had stayed his oars and touched the jutting piers,
You're
I
that
did
big
not
of a bitch,
step
huh?
into the well-known boat without a cordial greeting. Thence with speed up the familiar hill I took my way towards that sweet valley where I had been reared. 'Twas but a short hour's walk, ere veering round I saw the snow-white church upon her hill sit like a throned lady, sending out a gracious look all over her domain. Yon azure smoke betrays the lurking town. With eager footsteps I advance and reach the cottage threshold where my journey closed. Glad
Dude.
welcome had I, with some tears perhaps from my old dame, so kind and motherly, while she perused me with a parent's pride. The thoughts of
program.
gratitude shall fall like dew upon thy grave, good creature. While my heart can beat, never will I forget thy name. Heaven's blessing be upon thee where thou liest after thy innocent and busy stir in narrow cares, thy little daily growth of calm enjoyments, after 80 years, and more than 80, of untroubled life.
You got it.
Childless, yet by the strangers to thy blood honoured with little less than filial love. What joy was mine to see thee once again, thee and thy dwelling, and a crowd of
You
things
made a
about its
mistake.
narrow precincts all
Pay for the
beloved,
damage.
and many of them
We're not
seeming
having a
yet my own.
conversation. You're not
should I
jumping on
speak
this.
of
You're
what a
not
thousand
jumping
hearts
on
have
this
felt,
train. You are
and
not the
every
most
man alive
important
can
person on the
guess.
planet, and I'm not
The rooms,
boosting
the
your
court,
ego.
the garden were
Whatever
not
you
left
got to
long
say,
unsaluted,
motherfucker.
nor
I'm
the
about
sunny
to rip
seat
you off
round
that
the
goddamn
stone
stage.
table under the dark pine, friendly to studious
Shut
sort of
the
festive
fuck
hours.
up,
Nor that unruly
now.
child of mountain birth, the famous Brook,
My dude,
who, soon as
get
he
him
was
a- I want
boxed within
treason.
our garden,
I want
found
him
himself at
treason.
once, as if
Whoever
by
that
trick
is.
insidious and
It's
unkind,
treason, bitch. I
stripped
promise
of his
you.
voice and
Oh,
left
yeah,
to
yeah,
dimple
retard,
down
go and
without
argue with me,
effort and without a
motherfucker.
will,
I'm
the
not.
channel paved by man's officious
It
care.
is treason for you, whoever that is. I
looked at
promise
him
you.
and
I promise
smiled
you within
and
the
smiled
year.
again, and in the place of
Impeachment and
20,000
treason,
thoughts.
motherfucker. I am not
Ah,
arguing
quoth
with
I,
you.
Pretty prisoner,
At
are you there?
all, you
Or might
dumb
sarcastic
sack of
fancy then
shit.
have whispered, an emblem
You are
here
at
behold
death.
of thy own
You
life,
fucking
in its
retard.
late course
Shut
of even
up.
days with all their smooth
God
installments.
damn, you're that
The
bitch,
heart was
huh?
full, too full
You're
for
that bitch, huh?
I aged with
Okay,
pain,
dude.
walked proudly
You got
at
it,
my
motherfucker.
side. She guided me.
It is
I
death
willing,
for you.
Nay, wishing to be led.
Now shut up.
The face of every neighbour whom I met was like a
I promise you,
volume.
motherfucker, it's treason.
Some were hailed
I
upon
promise
the
you.
road, some busy at their work. Unceremonious greetings interchanged with half the length of a long field between.
It is treason. Shut up.
Among my schoolfellows I scattered round
I
like
promise you.
recognitions.
I will
with
do
some
something about it.
constraint
I
attended
promise you I
doubtless
will.
with a little
I
pride,
promise you.
with more shame for my habiliments.
Exit
Transformation
this building.
wrought
This is your
by
one and
gay
only
attire.
goddamn warning. I will do
Less
something about it,
delighted did I take my
motherfucker. Now
place at our
shut the
domestic
fuck
table.
up.
And dear friend, in this
Truly
endeavour
military,
simply to relate
I
the
will
poet's
kill your
history, may
ass.
I leave
Shut the
untold
fuck
the
up.
thankfulness with which I laid me down
God
in my
damn, you
accustomed
annoying
bed.
little bitch.
More welcome now, perhaps,
I mean
than
what I
if it
say,
had been more
motherfucker.
desired, or
You're on
been
my
more often
turf.
thought of with regret.
Shut up. So we're gonna
Lonely
arrest
bed
these
whence I
motherfuckers
had
behind the
heard
screen
the
with
wind
treason.
roar
I
and the
promise
rain
you,
beat
you don't, I will
hard,
kill your
where I
motherfucking
so
ass.
oft had lain
You
awake
make one
on summer
false move,
nights to watch
motherfucker.
the moon
You're
in
at no,
splendour
period.
couched among the leaves of a
Retard.
tall ash
Make that decision.
near our cottage stood. Had watched
I
her
make
with
myself
fixed
clear,
eyes while
bitch.
to and fro in the dark summit of the waving tree she
Really?
rocked with every
I
impulse of
promise
the
you.
breeze.
You
Among
are
the favourites
stupid.
who
Oh,
it
it's me,
pleased
it's
me
me,
well
it's
to see
me,
again
my
was one
country.
by ancient right, our
Retard.
inmate, a rough terrier of the hills. By birth and call of nature preordained to hunt the badger and unearth the fox
You're
among the
stupid.
impervious crags, but having been from youth
Allah,
our own
Allah,
adopted,
Allah.
he
I
had
just
passed
read the
into a
goddamn
gentler
original
sex.
strip, you dumb sack of
First
shit.
the
Now
boyish
shut
spirit
the fuck
flagged,
up.
And day by day along my veins I kindled with the stir, the fermentation, and the vernal heat of poesy, affecting private shades like a sick lover. Then this dog was used to watch me, an attendant and a friend, obsequious to my steps.
I
early
mean what I
and late.
say.
Though often of such dilatory walk, tired and uneasy at the halts I made. 100 times when roving high and low I have been harassed with the toil of verse. Much pains and little progress, and at once some lovely image in the song rose up full-formed like Venus rising from the sea. Then have I darted forwards to let my hand upon his back with stormy joy, caressing him again and yet again. And when at evening on the public way I sauntered like a river murmuring and talking to itself when all things are still, the creature trotted on before. Such was his custom, but whene'er he met a passenger approaching, he would turn to give me timely notice, and straightway, grateful for that admonishment, I my voice composed my gait, and with the air and mien of one whose thoughts are free, advanced to give and take a greeting that might save my name from piteous rumours, such as wait on men suspected to be crazed in brain. Those walks well worthy to be prized and loved, regretted, that word too was on my tongue, but they were richly laden with all good, and cannot be remembered but with thanks, and gratitude, and perfect joy of heart. Those walks in all their
Stop.
freshness now came back like a returning spring, when first I made once
Cease and
more the
desist.
circuit
I will
of our
kill
little
you,
lake.
motherfucker.
If ever happiness hath lodged with man, that day consummate happiness was mine, wide-spreading, steady, calm, contemplative. The sun was set or
You're
setting
that
when I
bitch,
left
huh?
our cottage door,
Okay.
and evening soon brought on a sober hour, not winning or serene, for cold and raw the air was, and untuned. But as a face we love is sweetest then when sorrow damps
My
it,
dude, I
or
promise
whatever
you I
look
will
it
do
chanced to
something about
wear, is sweetest if the heart have fullness in herself. Even so with me it fared that evening. Gently did my soul put off her veil, and
I'm not
self-transmuted
gonna deal with
stood
crime,
naked,
baby.
as in
No.
the presence of her God.
At all. No.
While on I walked, a comfort seemed to touch a heart that had not
So
been
let's go ahead and get
disconsolate.
that building.
Strength came
and
where weakness
remove
was
the
not
dumbass.
known to be, at least not felt, and restoration came like an intruder knocking at the door of unacknowledged weariness.
Yep.
I took the balance, and with firm hand weighed myself. Of that external scene which round me lay, little in this abstraction did I see. Remembered less, but I had inward hopes and swellings of the spirit, was rapt and soothed, conversed with promises, had glimmering views how life pervades the undecaying mind, how the immortal soul with godlike power informs, creates, and thaws the deepest sleep that time can lay upon her, how on earth man, if he do but live within the light of high endeavours, daily spreads abroad his being armed with strength that cannot fail. Nor was there want of milder thoughts, of love of innocence and holiday repose, and more than pastoral
Big gun
quiet
pointed
mid
at
the
the
stir
sun.
of
That's your
boldest
immediate sign
projects,
to shut
and
up.
the peaceful end at last, or glorious, by
you,
endurance
though.
won. Thus musing in a
I've got
wood
it,
I
thank
sat
you.
me down alone, continuing there to muse. The slopes and heights meanwhile were slowly overspread with darkness, and before a rippling breeze the long lake lengthened out its hoary line. And in the sheltered coppice where I sat, around me from among the hazel leaves, now here, now there, moved by the straggling wind, came ever and anon a breath-like sound,
Big boy.
quick as the pantings of the
Next
faithful
step.
dog,
Get it through
the
your
off
head
and
here.
on companion of my walk. And such at times believing them to be, I turned my head to look if he were there. Then into solemn thought I passed once more. A freshness also found I at this time in human life, the daily life of those whose occupations really I loved. The peaceful scene oft filled me with surprise, changed like a...
There's something about it. It's like a step below. I cannot put my finger on it. It's a deep high.
garden in the heat of spring after an 8 days' absence.
It's deep.
For, to omit the
In the
things
eyeball.
which were the same and yet appeared fair otherwise, amid this rural solitude,
It's fresh.
a narrow vale where each was known to all, 'twas not indifferent to a youthful mind to mark some sheltering bower or sunny nook,
Capture the
where an old
flag.
man had used to sit alone, now vacant, pale-faced babes whom I had left in arms, now rosy prattlers at the feet of a pleased grandame tottering up and down, and growing girls whose beauty, filched away with all its pleasant promises, was gone to deck some slighted playmate's homely cheek. Yes, I had something of a subtler sense, and often looking round was moved to smiles such as a delicate work of humour breeds. I read, without design, the opinions, thoughts of those plain living people now observed with clearer knowledge. With another eye I saw the quiet woodman in the woods, the shepherd roam the hills. With new delight, this chiefly did I note my grey-haired dame.
Shepherd of the Hills.
Saw her go forth to church or other work of state, equipped in monumental trim.
I don't like you. So.
Short velvet cloak, her bonnet of the
I
like,
did,
a
I
mantle
did.
such as Spanish cavaliers wore in old time.
Thank you.
Her smooth domestic life, affectionate without disquietude. Her talk, her business pleased me, and no less her clear though shallow stream of piety that ran on Sabbath days of pressure course. With thoughts unfelt till now I saw her read her Bible on hot Sunday afternoons, and loved the book when she had dropped asleep and made of it a pillow for her head. Nor less do I remember to have felt distinctly manifested at this time a human-heartedness about my love for objects hitherto the absolute wealth of my own private being and no more, which I had loved even as a blessed spirit or angel, if you were to dwell on earth, might love in individual happiness. But now there opened on me other thoughts of change, congratulation or regret, a pensive feeling. It spread far and wide. The trees, the mountains shed, and the brooks, the stars of heaven
See what
now
they're doing
seen in
there.
their old haunts.
Capture.
White Sirius glittering o'er the southern crags, Orion with his belt, those fair seven, acquaintances of every little child, and Jupiter, my own beloved star. Whatever shadings of mortality, whatever imports from the world of death had come among these objects heretofore, were in the main of mood less tender. Strong, deep, gloomy were they, and severe, the scatterings of awe or tremulous dread, that had given way in later youth to yearnings of a love enthusiastic, to delight and hope. As one who hangs down bending from the side of a slow-moving boat upon the breast of a still water, solacing himself with such discoveries as his eye can make beneath him in the bottom of the deep, sees many beauteous sights,
No,
meads, fishes,
dude.
flowers,
Stranger.
rods,
I
pebbles,
promise you,
trees,
dude.
and fancies more. Yet often
You're being
is
held
perplexed
accountable,
and
stranger.
cannot part
I promise
the shadow
you.
from the substance, rocks and sky, mountains and clouds, reflected in
Streaming
the
through
depth
the
of the
cell
clear
tower.
flood,
No, I'm
and
not
things which there abide in their true dwelling.
No.
Now is
You're a
crossed by
stranger.
gleam of his own image by a sunbeam now,
I appreciate
and
it.
wavering
It's fine.
motions sent he knows not whence, impediments that make his task more sweet.
But no, you're not
Such
going
pleasant office is long pursued, incumbent o'er the surface of past time, with like success, nor often have appeared shapes fairer or less artfully discerned than these to which the tale, indulgent friend, would now direct thy notice. Yet in spite of pleasure won, and knowledge not withheld, there was an inner falling off. I loved deeply all that had been loved before, more deeply even than ever, but a swarm of heady schemes jostling each other, gauds, and feast and dance, and public revelry, and sports and games, too grateful in themselves, yet in themselves less grateful, I believe, than as they were a badge glossy and fresh of manliness and freedom. All conspired to lure my mind from firm habitual quest of feeding pleasures, to depress the zeal and damp those yearnings which had once been mine. A wild, unworldly-minded youth, given up to his own eager thoughts, would demand some skill and longer time than may be spared to paint these vanities, and how they wrought in haunts where they, till now, had been unknown. It seemed the very garments that I wore preyed on my strength, and stopped the quiet stream of self-forgetfulness. Yes, that heartless chase of trivial pleasures was a poor exchange for books and nature at that early age. 'Tis true, some casual knowledge might be gained of character or life, but at that time of manners put to school I took small note, and all my deeper passions lay elsewhere. Far better had it been to exalt the mind by solitary study, to uphold intense desire through meditative peace. And yet for chastisement of these regrets, the memory of one particular hour doth here rise up against me. Mid a throng of maids and youths, old men and matrons stayed, a medley of all tempers, I had passed the night in dancing gaiety and mirth, with din of instruments and shuffling feet, and glancing forms and tapers glittering, and unaimed prattle flying up and down. Spirits upon the stretch, and here and there slight shocks of young love-liking interspersed, whose transient pleasure mounted to the head and tingled through the veins. Ere we retired, the cock had crowed, and now the eastern sky was kindling, not unseen, from humble copse and open field through which the pathway wound, and homeward led my steps. Magnificent the morning rose, in memorable pomp, glorious as e'er I had beheld. In front the sea lay laughing at a distance.
Yeah, dude, get out.
Near the solid mountains shone, bright as the clouds, rain tinctured, drenched in empyrean light. And in the meadows and the lower grounds was all the sweetness of a common dawn. Dews, vapours, and the melody of birds, and labourers going forth to till the fields. Ah, need I say, dear friend, that to the brim my heart was full. I made no vows, but vows were then made for me. One unknown to me was given, that I should be, else sinning greatly, a dedicated spirit. On I walked in thankful blessedness, which yet survives. Strange rendezvous. My mind was at that time a party-coloured show of grave and gay, solid and light, short-sighted and profound, of inconsiderate habits and sedate, consorting in one mansion unreproved. The worth I knew of powers that I possessed, though slighted and too oft misused. Besides, that summer, swarming as it did with thoughts transient and idle, lacked not intervals when folly from the frown of fleeting time shrunk, and the mind experienced in herself conformity as just as that of old to the end and written spirit of God's works, whether held forth in nature or in man, through pregnant vision, separate or conjoined. When from our better selves we have too long been parted by the hurrying world, and droop, sick of its business, of its pleasures tired, how gracious, how benign is solitude, how potent a mere image of her sway, most potent when impressed upon the mind with an appropriate human centre, hermit deep in the bosom of the wilderness, votary in vast cathedral where no foot is treading, where no other face is seen, kneeling at prayers, or watchman on the top of lighthouse beaten by Atlantic waves, or as the soul of that great power is met, sometimes embodied on a public road, when for the night deserted it assumes a character of quiet more profound than pathless wastes. Once, when those summer months were flown, and autumn brought its annual show of oars with oars contending, sails with sails, upon Wenander's spacious breast, it chanced that, after I had left a flower-decked room, whose indoor pastime lighted up survived to a late hour, and spirits overwrought were making night do penance for a day spent in a round of strenuous idleness, my homeward course led up a long ascent, where the road's watery surface to the top of that sharp rising glittered to the moon, and bore the semblance of another stream stealing with silent laps to join the brook that murmured in the vale. All else was still. No living thing appeared in earth or air, and save the flowing water's peaceful voice, sound there was none. Lo, an uncouth shape, shown by a sudden turning of the road, so near that slipping back into the shade of a thick hawthorn I could mark him well, myself unseen. He was of stature tall, a span above man's common measure, tall, stiff, lank, and upright. A more meagre man was never seen before by night or day. Long were his arms, pallid his hands. His mouth looked ghastly in the moonlight. From behind a milestone propped him. I could also ken that he was clothed in military garb, though faded, yet entire. Companionless, no dog attending, by no staff sustained, he stood, and in his very dress appeared a desolation, a simplicity, to which the trappings of a gaudy world make a strange background. From his lips ere long issued low muttered sounds, as if of pain or some uneasy thought, yet still his form kept the same awful steadiness. At his feet his shadow lay, and moved not. From self-blame not wholly free, I watched him thus. At length, subduing my heart's specious cowardice, I left the shady nook where I had stood, and hailed him. Slowly from his resting place he rose, and with a lean and wasted arm in measured gesture lifted to his head returned my salutation, then resumed his station as before, and when I asked his history, the veteran in reply was neither slow nor eager, but unmoved, and with a quiet, uncomplaining voice, a stately air of mild indifference, he told in few plain words a soldier's tale, that in the tropic islands he had served, whence he had landed scarcely 3 weeks past, that on his landing he had been dismissed, and now was travelling towards his native home. This heard, I said in pity, "Come with me." He stooped, and straightway from the ground took up an oaken staff by me yet unobserved, a staff which must have dropped from his slack hand and lay till now neglected in the grass. Though weak his step and cautious, he appeared to travel without pain, and I beheld, with an astonishment but ill suppressed, his ghostly figure moving at my side. Nor could I, while we journeyed thus, forbear to turn from present hardships to the past, and speak of war, battle, and pestilence, sprinkling this talk with questions better spared on what he might himself have seen or felt. He all the while was in demeanour calm, concise in answer, solemn and sublime, he might have seemed, but that in all he said there was a strange half-absence, as of one knowing too well the importance of his theme, but feeling it no longer. Our discourse soon ended, and together on we passed in silence through a wood gloomy and still. Upturning then along an open field, we reached a cottage. At the door I knocked, and earnestly to charitable care commended him as a poor friendless man.
It's calling my name, but it's like, I'm so good.
Assured that now the traveller would repose in comfort, I entreated that henceforth he would not linger in the public ways, but ask for timely furtherance and help, such as his state required.
My home. It's on camera.
At this reproof, with the same ghastly mildness in his look, he said, "My trust is in the God of heaven, and in the eye of him who passes me." The cottage door was speedily unbarred, and now the soldier touched his hat once more with his lean hand, and in a faltering voice, whose tone bespake reviving interests till then unfelt, he thanked me. I returned the farewell blessing of the patient man, and so we parted. Back I cast a look, and lingered near the door a little space, then sought with quiet heart my distant home. End of section 4.
Strongholds.
Section 5 of The Prelude by William Wordsworth. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Book 5th. Books. When contemplation, like the night calm felt through earth and sky, spreads widely and sends deep into the soul its tranquilizing power, even then I sometimes grieve for thee, O man, earth's paramount creature.
Appreciate you.
So much for woes that thou endurest, heavy though that weight be, cloud-like it mounts, or touched with light divine doth melt away. But for those palms achieved through length of time by patient exercise of study and hard thought,
Team score.
there it is that sadness finds its fuel. Hitherto, in progress through this verse, my mind hath looked upon the speaking face of earth and heaven as her prime teacher, intercourse with man established by the sovereign intellect, who through that bodily image hath diffused, as might appear to the eye of fleeting time, a deathless spirit. Thou also, man, hast wrought for commerce of thy nature with herself, things that aspire to unconquerable life, and yet we feel, we cannot choose but feel that they must perish.
Okay.
Tremblings of the heart it gives to think that our immortal being no more shall need such garments. And yet man, as long as he shall be the child of earth, might almost weep to have what he may lose, nor be himself extinguished, but survive, abject, depressed, forlorn, disconsolate. A thought is with me sometimes, and I say, should the whole frame of earth by inward throes be wrenched, or fire come down from far to scorch her pleasant habitations, and dry up old ocean, in his bed left singed and bare, yet would the living presence still subsist victorious, composure would ensue, and kindlings like the morning, presage sure of day returning and of life revived. But all the meditations of mankind, yea, all the adamantine holds of truth, by reason built, or passion, which itself is highest reason in a soul sublime, the consecrated works of bard and sage, sensuous or intellectual, wrought by men, twin labourers and heirs of the same hopes, where would they be? Oh, why hath not the mind some element to stamp her image on in nature somewhat nearer to her own? Why, gifted with such powers to send abroad her spirit, must it lodge in shrines so frail? One day, when from my lips a like complaint had fallen in presence of a studious friend, he with a smile made answer, that in truth 'twas going far to seek disquietude. But on the front of his reproof confessed that he himself had oftentimes given way to kindred hauntings.
You feel it.
Whereupon I told that once in the stillness of a summer's noon, while I was seated in a rocky cave by the seaside, perusing, so it chanced, the famous history of the errant knight recorded by Cervantes, these same thoughts beset me, and to height unusual rose, while listlessly I sat, and having closed the book, had turned my eyes toward the wide sea. On poetry and geometric truth, and their high privilege of lasting life, from all internal injury exempt, I mused upon these chiefly, and at length my senses yielding to the sultry air, sleep seized me, and I passed into a dream. I saw before me stretched a boundless plain of sandy wilderness, all black and void, and as I looked around, distress and fear came creeping over me, when at my side, close at my side, an uncouth shape appeared, upon a dromedary, mounted high. He seemed an Arab of the Bedouin tribes. A lance he bore, and underneath one arm a stone, and in the opposite hand a shell of a surpassing brightness. At the sight much I rejoiced, not doubting but a guide was present, one who with unerring skill would through the desert lead me. And while yet I looked and looked, self-questioned what this freight which the newcomer carried through the waste could mean, the Arab told me that the stone, to give it in the language of the dream, was Euclid's Elements, and this, said he, is something of more worth. And that the word stretched forth the shell, so beautiful in shape, in colour so resplendent, with command that I should hold it to my ear. I did so, and heard that instant in an unknown tongue, which yet I understood, articulate sounds, a loud prophetic blast of harmony, an ode in passion uttered which foretold destruction to the children of the earth by deluge, now at hand. No sooner ceased the song than the Arab with calm look declared that all would come to pass, of which the voice had given forewarning, and that he himself was going then to bury those two books, the one that held acquaintance with the stars, and wedded soul to soul in purest bond of reason, undisturbed by space or time. The other that was a god, yea, many gods, had voices more than all the winds, with power to exhilarate the spirit, and to soothe, through every clime, the heart of humankind. While this was uttering, strange as it may seem, I wondered not, although I plainly saw the one to be a stone, the other a shell, nor doubted once but that they both were books, having a perfect faith in all that passed.
Okay, buddy.
Far stronger now grew the desire I felt to cleave unto this man, but when I prayed to share his enterprise, he hurried on, reckless of me. I followed, not unseen, for oftentimes he cast a backward look, grasping his twofold treasure. Lance in rest he rode, I keeping pace with him, and now he to my fancy had become the knight whose tale Cervantes tells. yet not the night, but was an Arab of the desert too. Of these was neither, and was both at once. His countenance meanwhile grew more disturbed, and looking backwards when he looked, mine eyes saw over half the wilderness diffused a bed of glittering light. I asked the cause. It is, said he, the waters of the deep gathering upon us. Quickening then the pace of the unwieldy creature he bestrode, he left me. I called after him aloud. He heeded not, but with his twofold charge still in his grasp, before me, full in view, went hurrying o'er the illimitable waste, with the fleet waters of a drowning world in chase of him. Whereat I waked in terror, and saw the sea before me, and the book, in which I had been reading, at my side. Full often, taking from the world of sleep this Arab phantom which I thus beheld, this semi-Quixote, I to him have given a substance, fancied him a living man, a gentle dweller in the desert, crazed by love and feeling, and internal thought protracted among endless solitudes, have shaped him wandering upon this quest. Nor have I pitied him, but rather felt reverence was due to a being thus employed, and thought that, in the blind and awful lair of such a madness, reason did lie couched. Now there are on earth to take in charge their wives, their children, and their virgin loves, or whatsoever else the heart holds dear. Now to stir for these, yea, will I say, contemplating in soberness the approach of an event so dire, by signs in earth or heaven made manifest, that I could share that maniac's fond anxiety, and go upon like errand. Oftentimes, at least, me hath such strong enhancement overcome, when I have held a volume in my hand, poor earthly casket of immortal verse, Shakespeare or Milton, labourers divine. Great and benign, indeed, must be the power of living nature which could thus so long detain me from the best of other guides and dearest helpers, left unthanked, unpraised, even in the time of lisping infancy, and later down in prattling childhood even, while I was travelling back among those days. How could I ever play an ingrate's part? Once more should I have made those bowers resound by intermingling strains of thankfulness with their own thoughtless melodies. At least it might have well beseemed me to repeat some simply fashioned tale, to tell again in slender accents of sweet verse some tale that did bewitch me then, and soothes me now. O friend, O poet, brother of my soul, think not that I could pass along untouched by these remembrances. Yet wherefore speak? I call upon a few weak words to say what is already written in the hearts of all that breathe, what in the path of all drops daily from the tongue of every child, wherever man is found. The trickling tear upon the cheek of listening infancy proclaims it, and the insuperable look speaks as if it never could be full. That portion of my story I shall leave there registered. Whatever else of power or pleasure sown or fostered thus may be peculiar to myself, let that remain where still it works, though hidden from all search among the depths of time. Yet is it just that here, in memory of all books which lay their sure foundations in the heart of man, whether by native prose or numerous verse, that in the name of all inspired souls, from Homer the great thunderer, from the voice that roars along the bed of Jewish song, and that more varied and elaborate, those tears of little ones, old men who have survived their joys. 'Tis just that in behalf of these, the works, and of the men that framed them, whether known or sleeping nameless in their scattered graves, that I should here assert their rights, attest their honours, and should, once for all, pronounce their benediction, speak of them as powers forever to be hallowed, only less, for what we are and what we may become, than nature's self, which is the breath of God, or his pure word by miracle revealed. Rarely and with reluctance would I stoop to transitory themes, yet I rejoice, and by these thoughts admonished will pour out thanks with uplifted heart, that I was reared safe from an evil which these days have laid upon the children of the land, pest that might have dried me up, body and soul. This verse is dedicated to nature's self, and things that teach as nature teaches. Then, oh, where had been the man, the poet, where had we been, we too, beloved friend? If in the season of unperilous choice, in lieu of wandering as we did through vales rich with indigenous produce, open ground of fancy, happy pastures ranged at will, we had been followed, hourly watched, and noosed, each in his several melancholy walks, stringed like a poor man's heifer at its feed, led through the lanes in forlorn servitude, or rather like a stalled ox debarred from touch of growing grass, that may not taste a flower till it have yielded up its sweets, the prelibation to the mower's scythe. Behold the parent hen amid her brood, though fledged and feathered, well pleased to part and straggle from her presence, still a brood, and she herself from the maternal bond still undischarged. Yet doth she little more than move with them in tenderness and love, the centre to the circle which they make. And now and then, alike from need of theirs and call of her own natural appetites, she scratches,
They're waiting
ransacks
for you
up
to
the
die
earth
is
for
what it
food,
is.
which they partake at pleasure. Early died my honoured mother, she who was the heart and hinge of all our learnings and our loves. She left us destitute, and as we might, trooping together. Little suits it me to break upon the Sabbath of her rest with any thought that looks at others' blame. Nor would I praise her but in perfect love. Hence am I checked, but let me boldly say, in gratitude and for the sake of truth unheard by her, that she, not falsely taught, fetching her goodness rather from times past, and shaping novelties for times to come, had no presumption, no such jealousy, nor did by habit of her thoughts mistrust our nature, but had virtual faith that he who fills the mother's breast with innocent milk doth also for our nobler part provide, under his great correction and control, as innocent instincts and as innocent food, that draws for minds that are left free to trust in the simplicities of opening life, sweet honey out of spurned or dreaded weeds. This was her creed, and therefore she was pure from anxious fear of error or mishap, and evil, overweeningly so called, was not puffed up by false unnatural hopes, nor selfish with unnecessary cares, nor with impatience from the season asked more than its timely produce, rather loved the hours for what they are, than from regards glanced on their promises in restless pride. Such was she, not from faculties more strong than others have, but from the times perhaps and spot in which she lived, and through a grace of modest meekness, simple-mindedness, a heart that found benignity and hope, being itself benign. Our drift, I fear, is scarcely obvious. That common sense may try this modern system by its fruits. Leave let me take to place before her sight a specimen portrayed with faithful hand. Full early trained to worship seemliness, this model of a child is never known to mix in quarrels, that were far beneath its dignity. With gifts he bubbles o'er, as generous as a fountain. Selfishness may not come near him, nor the little throng of flitting pleasures tempt him from his path. Wandering beggars propagate his name. Dumb creatures find him tender as a nun, and natural or supernatural fear, unless it leap upon him in a dream, touches him not. To enhance the wonder, see how arch his notices, how nice his sense of the ridiculous. Not blind is he to the broad follies of the licensed world, yet innocent himself withal, though shrewd, and can read lectures upon innocence. A miracle of scientific law. Ships he can guide across the pathless sea, and tell you all their cunning. He can read the inside of the earth, and spell the stars. He knows the policies of foreign lands, can string you names of districts, cities, towns, the whole world over, tight as beads of dew upon a gossamer thread. He sifts, he weighs. All things are put to question. He must live knowing that he grows wiser every day, or else not live at all, and seeing too each little drop of wisdom as it falls into the dimpling cistern of his heart. For this unnatural growth the trainer blame, pity the tree, for human vanity, wert thou extinguished, little would be left which he could truly love. But how escape? For, ever as a thought of purer, birth rises to lead him toward a better clime. Some intermeddler still is on the watch to drive him back and pound him like a stray within the pinfold of his own conceit. Meanwhile old Grand Dame Earth is grieved to find the playthings which her love designed for him unthought of. In their woodland beds the flowers weep, and the river sides are all forlorn. Give us once again the wishing cap of Fortunatus, and the invisible coat of Jack the Giant Killer, Robin Hood and Sabra in the forest with St. George. The child whose love is here at least doth reap one precious gain, that he forgets himself. These mighty workmen of our later age, who with the broad highway have overbridged the froward chaos of futurity, tamed to their bidding, they who have the skill to manage books and things and make them act on infant minds as surely as the sun deals with a flower, the keepers of our time, the guides and wardens of our faculties, sages who in their prescience would control all accidents, and to the very road which they have fashioned would confine us down, like engines. When will their presumption learn that in the unreasoning progress of the world a wiser spirit is at work for us, better eye than theirs, most prodigal of blessings and most studious of our good, even in what seem our most unfruitful hours? There was a boy, ye knew him well, ye cliffs and islands of Winander. Many a time at evening, when the earliest stars began to move along the edges of the hills, rising or setting, would he stand alone beneath the trees or by the glimmering lake. And there, with fingers interwoven, both hands pressed closely palm to palm, and to his mouth uplifted, he, as through an instrument, blew mimic hootings to the silent owls, that they might answer him. And they would shout across the watery vale, and shout again, responsive to his call, with quivering peals, and long halloos and screams, and echoes loud, redoubled and redoubled, concourse wild of jocund din. And when a lengthened pause of silence came and baffled his best skill, then sometimes, in that silence while he hung listening, a gentle shock of mild surprise has carried far into his heart the voice of mountain torrents, or the visible scene would enter unawares into his mind, with all its solemn imagery, its rocks, its woods, and that uncertain heaven received into the bosom of the steady lake. This boy was taken from his mates and died in childhood ere he was full 12 years old. Fair is the spot, most beautiful the vale where he was born. The grassy churchyard hangs upon a slope above the village school, and through that churchyard when my way has led on summer evenings, I believe that there a long half hour together I have stood mute, looking at the grave in which he lies. Even now appears before the mind's clear eye that self-same village church. I see her sit, the throned lady whom erewhile we hailed, on her green hill, forgetful of this boy who slumbers at her feet, forgetful too of all her silent neighbourhood of graves, and listening only to the gladsome sounds that from the rural school ascending play beneath her and about her. May she long behold a race of young ones like to those with whom I herded. Easily indeed we might have fed upon a fatter soil of arts and letters, but be that forgiven. A race of real children, not too wise, too learned, or too good, but wanton, fresh, and bandied up and down by love and hate, not unresentful where self-justified, fierce, moody, patient, venturous, modest, shy, mad at their sports like withered leaves in winds. Though doing wrong and suffering, and full oft bending beneath our life's mysterious weight of pain and doubt and fear, yet yielding not in happiness to the happiest upon earth. Simplicity in habit, truth in speech, be these the daily strengtheners of their minds. May books and nature be their early joy, and knowledge rightly honoured with that name, knowledge not purchased by the loss of power. Well do I call to mind the very week when I was first entrusted to the care of that sweet valley, when its paths, its shores, and brooks were like a dream of novelty to my half-infant thoughts. That very week, while I was roving up and down alone, seeking I knew not what, I chanced to cross one of those open fields which, shaped like ears, make green peninsulas on Esthwaite's lake. Twilight was coming on, yet through the gloom appeared distinctly on the opposite shore a heap of garments, as if left by one who might have there been bathing. Long I watched, but no one owned them. Meanwhile the calm lake grew dark with all the shadows on its breast, and now and then a fish...
I promise you, iceberg. I got you. We'll see if I make a deck. Oh, dude, I forgot. I need to look that up. My bad. I woke up. I woke up ready to go today. I forgot about it. Go check my email. White or green? How much space do I have? William? What year is this? Oh, Betty Davis. Fifth book. William. Excuse me.
Sharp leaping snapped the breathless stillness. The succeeding day, those unclaimed garments telling a plain tale, drew to the spot an anxious crowd. Some looked in passive expectation from the shore, while from a boat others hung o'er the deep, sounding with grappling irons and long poles. At last the dead man, mid that beauteous scene of trees and hills and water, bolt upright rose, with his ghastly face, a spectre shape of terror, yet no soul-debasing fear. Young as I was, a child not 9 years old, possessed me, for my inner eye had seen such sights before, among the shining streams of fairyland, the forest of romance. Their spirit hallowed the sad spectacle with decoration of ideal grace, a dignity, a smoothness, like the works of Grecian art and purest poesy. A precious treasure had I long possessed, a little yellow canvas-covered book, a slender abstract of the Arabian tales, and from companions in a new abode, when first I learnt that this dear prize of mine was but a block hewn from a mighty quarry, that there were 4 large volumes laden all with kindred matter, 'twas to me in truth a promise scarcely earthly. Instantly, with one not richer than myself, I made a covenant that each should lay aside the moneys he possessed, and hoard up more, till our joint savings had amassed enough to make this book our own. Through several months, in spite of all temptation, we preserved religiously that vow, but firmness failed, nor were we ever masters of our wish. And when thereafter to my father's house the holidays returned me, there to find that golden store of books which I had left, what joy was mine! How often in the course of those glad respites, though a soft west wind ruffled the waters to the angler's wish for a whole day together, have I lain down by thy side, O Derwent, murmuring stream, on the hot stones and in the glaring sun, and there have read, devouring as I read, defrauding the day's glory, desperate, till with a sudden bound of smart reproach, such as an idler deals with in his shame, I to the sport betook myself again. A gracious spirit o'er this earth presides, and o'er the heart of man. Invisibly it comes to works of unreproved delight, and tendency benign, directing those who care not, know not, think not what they do. The tales that charm away the wakeful night in Araby, romances, legends penned for solace by dim light of monkish lamps, fictions for ladies of their love, devised by youthful squires, adventures endless, spun by the dismantled warrior in old age, out of the bowels of those very schemes in which his youth did first extravagate. These spread like day, and something in the shape of these will live till man shall be no more. Dumb yearnings, hidden appetites are ours, and they must have their food. Our childhood sits, our simple childhood, sits upon a throne that hath more power than all the elements. I guess not what this tells of being past, nor what it augurs of the life to come. But so it is, And in that dubious hour, that twilight when we first begin to see this dawning earth, to recognize, expect, and in the long probation that ensues, the time of trial, ere we learn to live in reconcilement with our stinted powers, to endure this state of meagre vassalage, unwilling to forego, confess, submit, uneasy and unsettled, yoke-fellows to custom, mettlesome, and not yet tamed and humbled down. Oh, then we feel, we know where we have friends. Ye dreamers, then, forgers of daring tales, we bless you then, impostors, drivellers, dotards, as the ape philosophy will call you. Then we feel with what and how great might ye are in league, who make our wish, our power, our thought a deed, an empire, a possession. Ye whom time and seasons serve, all faculties to whom earth crouches, the elements of potter's clay, space like a heaven filled up with northern lights, here, nowhere, there, and everywhere at once. Relinquishing this lofty eminence for ground, though humbler, not the less a tract of the same isthmus, which our spirits cross in progress from their native continent to earth and human life, the song might dwell on that delightful time of growing youth, when craving for the marvellous gives way to strengthening love for things that we have seen, when sober truth and steady sympathies, offered to notice by less daring pens, take firmer hold of us, and words themselves move us with conscious pleasure. I am sad at thought of raptures now forever flown. Almost to tears I sometimes could be sad to think of, to read over many a page, poems with all of name, which at that time did never fail to entrance me, and are now dead in my eyes, dead as a theatre, fresh emptied of spectators. Twice 5 years or less I might have seen, when first my mind with conscious pleasure opened to the charm of words in tuneful order, found them sweet for their own sakes, a passion and a power, and phrases pleased me chosen for delight, for pomp or love. Oft in the public roads yet unfrequented, while the morning light was yellowing the hilltops, I went abroad with a dear friend, and for the better part of 2 delightful hours we strolled along by the still borders of the misty lake, repeating favourite verses with one voice, or conning more, as happy as the birds that round us chaunted. Well might we be glad, lifted above the ground by airy fancies, more bright than madness or the dreams of wine. And though full oft the objects of our love were false, and in their splendour overwrought, yet was there surely then no vulgar power working within us, nothing less in truth than that most noble attribute of man, though yet untutored and inordinate, that wish for something loftier, more adorned, than is the common aspect, daily garb of human life. What wonder then if sounds of exultation echoed through the groves? For images and sentiments and words and everything encountered or pursued in that delicious world of poesy kept holiday, a never-ending show, with music, incense, festival, and flowers. Here must we pause. This only let me add, from heart experience and in humblest sense of modesty, that he, who in his youth, a daily wanderer among woods and fields, with living nature hath been intimate, not only in that raw unpractised time is stirred to ecstasy, as others are, by glittering verse, but further doth receive in measure only dealt out to himself, knowledge and increase of enduring joy from the great nature that exists in works of mighty poets. Visionary power attends the motions of the viewless winds, embodied in the mystery of words. There darkness makes abode, and all the host of shadowy things work endless changes. There, as in a mansion like their proper home, even forms and substances are circumfused by that transparent veil with light divine, and, through the turnings intricate of verse, present themselves as objects recognized, in flashes, and with glory not their own. End of section 5. Section 6 of the Prelude by William Wordsworth. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Book 6, Cambridge and the Alps. The leaves were fading when to Esthwaite's banks and the simplicities of cottage life I bade farewell, and one among the youth who, summoned by that season, reunite as scattered birds troop to the fowler's lure, went back to Granta's cloisters, not so prompt or eager, though as gay and undepressed in mind as when I thence had taken flight a few short months before. I turned my face without repining from the coves and heights, clothed in the sunshine of the withering fern. Quitted not both the mild magnificence of calmer lakes and louder streams, and you, frank-hearted maids of rocky Cumberland, you and your not unwelcome days of mirth, relinquished, and your nights of revelry, and in my own unlovely cell sat down in lightsome mood, such privilege has youth that cannot take long leave of pleasant thoughts. Bonds of indolent society relaxing in their hold, henceforth I lived more to myself. 2 winters may be passed without a separate notice. Many books were skimmed, devoured, or studiously perused, but with no settled plan. I was detached internally from academic cares. Yet independent study seemed a course of hardy disobedience toward friends and kindred, proud rebellion and unkind. This spurious virtue rather let it bear a name it now deserves. This cowardice gave treacherous sanction to that over-love of freedom which encouraged me to turn from regulations even of my own, as from restraints and bonds. Yet who can tell, who knows what thus may have been gained, both then and at a later season, or preserved? What love of nature, what original strength of contemplation, what intuitive truths, the deepest and the best, what keen research, unbiased, unbewildered, and unawed. The poet's soul was with me at that time. Sweet meditations, the still overflow of present happiness, while future years lacked not anticipations, tender dreams, no few of which have since been realized. And some remain, hopes for my future life. 4 years and 30, told this very week, have I been now a sojourner on earth. By sorrow not unsmitten, yet for me life's morning radiance hath not left the hills, the dew is on the flowers. Those were the days which also first emboldened me to trust with firmness, hitherto but lightly touched by such a daring thought, that I might leave some monument behind me which pure hearts should reverence, the instinctive humbleness, maintained even by the very name and thought of printed books and authorship, began to melt away, and further the dread awe of mighty names was softened down and seemed approachable, admitting fellowship of modest sympathy. Such aspect now, though not familiarly, my mind put on, content to observe, to achieve, and to enjoy. All winter long, whenever free to choose, did I by night frequent the college groves and tributary walks, the last and oft the only one who had been lingering there through hours of silence, till the porter's bell, a punctual follower on the stroke of 9, rang with its blunt, unceremonious voice, inexorable summons, lofty elms, inviting shades of opportune recess, bestowed composure on a neighbourhood unpeaceful in itself. A single tree with sinuous trunk, boughs exquisitely wreathed, grew there, an ash which winter for himself decked out with pride and with outlandish grace. Up from the ground and almost to the top, the trunk and every master branch were green with clustering ivy, and the lightsome twigs and outer spray profusely tipped with seeds that hung in yellow tassels, while the air stirred them, not voiceless. And have I stood foot-bound up looking at this lovely tree beneath a frosty moon. The hemisphere of magic fiction, verse of mine perchance, may never tread, but scarcely Spencer's self could have more tranquil visions in his youth, or could more bright appearances create of human forms with superhuman powers, than I beheld loitering on calm clear nights alone beneath this fairy work of earth. On the vague reading of a truant youth, 'twere idle to descant. My inner judgment not seldom differed from my taste in books, as if it appertained to another mind. And yet the books which then I valued most are dearest to me now, for having scanned, not heedlessly, the laws and watched the forms of nature, in that knowledge I possessed a standard, often usefully applied, even when unconsciously, to things removed from a familiar sympathy. In fine, I was a better judge of thoughts than words, misled in estimating words, not only by common inexperience of youth, but by the trade in classic niceties, the dangerous craft of culling term and phrase from languages that want the living voice to carry meaning to the natural heart, to tell us what is passion, what is truth, what reason, what simplicity and sense. Yet may we not entirely overlook the pleasure gathered from the rudiments of geometric science. Though advanced in these inquiries, with regret I speak, no farther than the threshold, there I found both elevation and composed delight. With Indian awe and wonder, ignorance pleased with its own struggles, did I meditate on the relation those abstractions bear to nature's laws, by what process led those immaterial agents bowed their heads duly to serve the mind of earth-born man. From star to star, from kindred sphere to sphere, from system on to system without end. More frequently from the same source I drew a pleasure quiet and profound, a sense of permanent and universal sway, and paramount belief. There recognized a type for finite natures of the one supreme existence, the surpassing life which, to the boundaries of space and time, of melancholy space and doleful time, superior and incapable of change, nor touched by welterings of passion, is and hath the name of God. transcendent peace and silence did await upon these thoughts that were a frequent comfort to my youth. 'Tis told by one whom stormy waters threw, with fellow sufferers by the shipwreck spared, upon a desert coast, that having brought to land a single volume, saved by chance, the treatise of geometry, he won't, although of food and clothing destitute, and beyond common wretchedness depressed, depart from company and take this book, then first a self-taught pupil in its truths, to spots remote, and draw his diagrams with a long staff upon the sand, and thus did oft beguile his sorrow, and almost forget his feeling. So, if like effect from the same cause produced, mid outward things so different may rightly be compared, so was it then with me, and so will be with poets ever. Mighty is the charm of those abstractions to a mind beset with images, and haunted by herself, and specially delightful unto me was that clear synthesis built up aloft so gracefully, even then when it appeared not more than a mere plaything, or a toy to sense embodied, not the thing it is, in verity an independent world, created out of pure intelligence. Such dispositions then were mine, unearned by aught, I fear, of genuine desert, mine through heaven's grace and inborn aptitudes. And not to leave the story of that time imperfect, with these habits must be joined moods melancholy, fits of spleen, that loved a pensive sky, sad days, and piping winds, the twilight more than dawn, autumn than spring, the treasured and luxurious gloom of choice and inclination mainly, and the mere redundancy of youth's contentedness. To time thus spent add multitudes of hours pilfered away, by what the bard who sang of the enchanter indolence hath called good-natured lounging, and behold a map of my collegiate life, far less intense than duty called for, or without regard to duty, might have sprung up of itself by change of accident, or even to speak without unkindness in another place. Yet why take refuge in that plea? The fault, this I repeat, was mine be the blame. In summer, making quest for works of art, or scenes renowned for beauty, I explored that streamlet whose blue current works its way between romantic Dovedale's spiry rocks, pried into Yorkshire dales, or hidden tract of my own native region, and was blessed between these sundry wanderings with a joy above all joys, that seemed another morn risen on mid-noon, blessed with the presence, friend, of that sole sister, who hath been long dear to thee also, thy true friend and mine, now after separation desolate restored to me, such absence that she seemed a gift then first bestowed. The varied banks of Emont, hitherto unnamed in song, and that monastic castle mid tall trees, low standing by the margin of the stream, a mansion visited, as fame reports, by Sidney, where in sight of our Helvellyn, or stormy Crossfell, snatches he might pen of his Arcadia, by fraternal love inspired. That river and those mouldering towers have seen us side by side, and having clomb the darksome windings of a broken stair, and crept along a ridge of fractured wall, not without trembling, we in safety looked forth through some Gothic window's open space, and gathered with one mind a rich reward from the far-stretching landscape, by the light of morning beautified, a purple eve, or not less pleased, lay on some turret's head, catching from tufts of grass and harebell flowers their faintest whisper to the passing breeze, given out while midday heat oppressed the plains. Another maid there was, who also shared a gladness o'er that season, then to me, by her exulting outside look of youth and placid under countenance, first endeared. That other spirit, Coleridge, who is now so near to us, that meek confiding heart, so reverenced by us both, o'er paths and fields in all that neighbourhood, through narrow lanes of eglantine, and through the shady woods, and o'er the border beacon, and the waste of naked pools and common crags that lay exposed on the bare veldt, for scattered love, the spirit of pleasure, and youth's golden gleam. O friend, we had not seen thee at that time, and yet a power is on me, and a strong confusion, and I seem to plant thee there. Far art thou wandered now in search of health and milder breezes, melancholy lot. But thou art with us in the past, the present, with us in the times to come. There is no grief, no sorrow, no despair, no languor, no dejection, no dismay. No absence scarcely can there be for those who love as we do. Speed thee well, divide with us thy pleasure, thy returning strength, receive it daily as a joy of ours. Share with us thy fresh spirits, whether gift of gales Etesian or of tender thoughts. I too have been a wanderer, but alas, how different the fate of different men. Though mutually unknown, yea, nursed and reared as if in several elements, we were framed to bend at last to the same discipline, predestined, if two beings ever were, to seek the same delights and have one health, one happiness. Throughout this narrative, else sooner ended, I have borne in mind for whom it registers the birth and marks the growth of gentleness, simplicity and truth, and joyous loves that hallow innocent days of peace and self-command. Of rivers, fields and groves I speak to thee, my friend, to thee who yet a liveried schoolboy in the depths of the huge city, on the leaded roof of that wide edifice, thy school and home, wert used to lie and gaze upon the clouds moving in heaven, or of that pleasure tired, to shut thine eyes and by internal light see trees and meadows and thy native stream, far distant, thus beheld from year to year of a long exile. Nor could I forget, in this late portion of my argument, that scarcely, as my term of pupilage ceased, had I left those academic bowers, when thou wert thither guided. From the heart of London and from cloisters there thou camest, and didst sit down in temperance and peace, a rigorous student. What a stormy course then followed! Oh, it is a pang that calls for utterance, to think what easy change of circumstances might to thee have spared a world of pain, ripened 1,000 hopes, forever withered. Through this retrospect of my collegiate life I still have had the after sojourn in the self-same place present before my eyes, have played with times and accidents as children do with cards, or as a man who, when his house is built, a frame locked up in wood and stone, doth still, as impotent fancy prompts, by his fireside, rebuild it to his liking. I have thought of thee, thy learning, gorgeous eloquence, and all the strength and plumage of thy youth, thy subtle speculations, toils abstruse among the schoolmen, and platonic forms of wild ideal pageantry, shaped out from things well matched or ill, and words for things, the self-created sustenance of a mind debarred from nature's living images, compelled to be a life unto herself, and unrelentingly possessed by thirst of greatness, love, and beauty. Not alone, surely not in singleness of heart, should I have seen the light of evening fade from smooth Cam's silent waters. Had we met, even at that early time, needs must I trust in the belief that my maturer age, my calmer habits, and more steady voice, would with an influence benign have soothed or chased away the airy wretchedness that battened on thy youth. But thou hast trod a march of glory, which doth put to shame these vain regrets. Health suffers in thee, else such grief for thee would be the weakest thought that ever harboured in the breast of man. A passing word erewhile did lightly touch on wanderings of my own, that now embraced with livelier hope a region wider far. When the third summer freedest from restraint, a youthful friend, he too a mountaineer, not slow to share my wishes, took his staff, and sallying forth we journeyed side by side, bound to the distant Alps. A hardy slight did this unprecedented course imply of college studies and their set rewards. Nor had in truth the scheme been formed by me without uneasy forethought of the pain, the censures, and ill omening of those to whom my worldly interests were dear. Nature then was sovereign in my mind, and mighty forms seizing a youthful fancy had given a charter to irregular hopes. In any age of uneventful calm among the nations, surely would my heart have been possessed by similar desire. But Europe at that time was thrilled with joy, France standing on the top of golden hours, and human nature seeming born again. Lightly equipped, and but a few brief looks cast on the white cliffs of our native shore, from the receding vessel's deck, we chanced to land at Calais on the very eve of that great federal day, and there we saw, in a mean city and among a few, how bright a face is worn when joy of one is joy for tens of millions. Southward thence we held our way, direct through hamlets, towns, gaudy with relics of that festival, flowers left to wither on triumphal arcs, and window garlands, on the public roads, and once 3 days successively through paths by which our toilsome journey was abridged. Among sequestered villages we walked, and found benevolence and blessedness spread like a fragrance everywhere, and spring hath left no corner of the land untouched. Where elms for many and many a league in files with their thin umbrage on the stately roads of that great kingdom rustled o'er our heads, for ever near us as we paced along. How sweet at such a time, with such delight on every side in prime of youthful strength, to feed a poet's tender melancholy and fond conceit of sadness, with the sound of undulations varying as might please the wind that swayed them. Once and more than once, unhoused beneath the evening star, we saw dances of liberty, and in late hours of darkness, dances in the open air deftly prolonged, though grey-haired lookers-on might waste their breath in chiding. Under hills, the vine-clad hills and slopes of Burgundy, upon the bosom of the gentle Saône, we glided forward with the flowing stream, swift Rhone, our words the wings on which we cut a winding passage with majestic ease between thy lofty rocks. Enchanting show those woods and farms and orchards did present, and single cottages and lurking towns, reach after reach, succession without end of deep and stately vales. A lonely pair of strangers, till day closed, we sailed along, clustered together with a merry crowd of those emancipated, a blithe host of travellers, chiefly delegates returning from the great spousals newly solemnized at their chief city, in the sight of heaven. Like bees they swarmed, gaudy and gay as bees. Some vapoured in the unruliness of joy, and with their swords flourished as if to fight the saucy air. In this proud company we landed, took with them our evening meal, guests welcome almost as the angels were to Abraham of old. The supper done, with flowing cups elate and happy thoughts, we rose at signal given, and formed a ring and hand in hand danced round and round the board. All hearts were open, every tongue was loud with amity and glee. We bore a name honoured in France, the name of Englishmen, and hospitably did they give us hail, as their forerunners in a glorious course, and round the board we danced again. With these blithe friends our voyage we renewed at early dawn. The monastery bells made a sweet jingling in our youthful ears, the rapid river flowing without noise, and each uprising or receding spire spake with a sense of peace, at intervals touching the heart amid the boisterous crew by whom we were encompassed. Taking leave of this glad throng, foot travellers side by side, measuring our steps in quiet, we pursued our journey, and ere twice the sun had set, beheld the convent of Chartreuse, and there rested within an awful solitude. Yes, for even then no other than a place of soul-affecting solitude appeared that far-famed region, though our eyes had seen, as toward the sacred mansion we advanced, arms flashing and a military glare of riotous men commissioned to expel the blameless inmates, and belike subvert that frame of social being which so long hath bodied forth the ghostliness of things in silence visible and perpetual calm. Stay, stay your sacrilegious hands. The voice was nature, uttered from her alpine throne. I heard it then and seem to hear it now. Your impious work forbear, perish what may, let this one temple last, be this one spot of earth devoted to eternity. She ceased to speak, but while St. Bruno's pines waved their dark tops, not silent as they waved, and while below, along their several beds, murmured the sister streams of life and death. Thus by conflicting passions pressed, my heart responded. Honour to the patriot's zeal, glory and hope to newborn liberty. Hail to the mighty projects of the time. Discerning sword that justice wields, do thou go forth and prosper, and ye purging fires up to the loftiest towers of pride ascend, fanned by the breath of angry providence. And oh, if past and future be the wings on whose support, harmoniously conjoined, moves the great spirit of human knowledge, spare these courts of mystery, where a step advanced between the portals of the shadowy rocks leaves far behind life's treacherous vanities. For penitential tears and trembling hopes exchanged, to equalize in God's pure sight monarch and peasant, be the house redeemed with its unworldly votaries, for the sake of conquest over sense, hourly achieved through faith and meditative reason, resting upon the word of heaven imparted truth, calmly triumphant, and for humbler claim of that imaginative impulse sent from these majestic floods, yon shining cliffs, the untransmuted shapes of many worlds, cerulean ether's pure inhabitants, these forests unapproachable by death, that shall endure as long as man endures, to think, to hope, to worship and to feel, to struggle, to be lost within himself in trepidation from the blank abyss, to look with bodily eyes and be consoled. Not seldom since that moment have I wished that thou, O friend, the trouble or the calm hadst shared, when from profane regards apart, in sympathetic reverence we trod the floors of those dim cloisters. Till that hour, from their foundation, strangers to the presence of unrestricted and unthinking man. Abroad, how cheeringly the sunshine lay upon the open lawns. Palombra's groves entering, we fed the soul with darkness. Thence issued, and with uplifted eyes beheld, in different quarters of the bending sky, the cross of Jesus stand erect, as if hands of angelic powers had fixed it there, memorial reverenced by 1,000 storms. Yet then, from the undiscriminating sweep and rage of one state whirlwind, insecure. It is not my present purpose to retrace that variegated journey step by step. A march it was of military speed, and earth did change her images and forms before us, fast as clouds are changed in heaven. Day after day, up early and down late, from hill to vale we dropped, from vale to hill mounted, from province unto province swept, keen hunters in a chase of 14 weeks, eager as birds of prey, or as a ship upon the stretch when winds are blowing fair. Sweet coverts did we cross of pastoral life, enticing valleys, greeted them and left too soon, while yet the very flash and gleam of salutation were not passed away. Oh, sorrow for the youth who could have seen unchastened, unsubdued, unawed, unraised to patriarchal dignity of mind, and pure simplicity of wish and will, those sanctified abodes of peaceful man. Pleased, though to hardship born, and compassed round with danger, varying as the seasons change, pleased with his daily task, or if not pleased, contented from the moment that the dawn, oh, surely not without attendant gleams of soul illumination, calls him forth to industry, like glistenings flung on rocks, whose evening shadows lead him to repose. Well might a stranger look with bounding heart down on a green recess, the first I saw of those deep haunts, an aboriginal vale, quiet and lorded over and possessed by naked huts, wood-built and sown like tents, or Indian cabins over the fresh lawns and by the riverside. That very day, from a bare ridge, we also first beheld unveiled the summit of Mont Blanc, and grieved to have a soulless image on the eye that had usurped upon a living thought that never more could be. The wondrous vale of Chamonix stretched far below, and soon, with its dumb cataracts and streams of ice, a motionless array of mighty waves, 5 rivers broad and vast, made rich amends and reconciled us to realities. There small birds warble from the leafy trees, the eagle soars high in the element, there doth the reaper bind the yellow sheaf, the maiden spread the haycock in the sun, while winter like a well-tamed lion walks, descending from the mountain to make sport among the cottages by beds of flowers. Whate'er in this wide circuit we beheld or heard was fitted to our unripe state of intellect and heart. With such a book before our eyes, we could not choose but read lessons of genuine brotherhood, the plain and universal reason of mankind, the truths of young and old. Nor side by side, pacing, 2 social pilgrims, or alone, each with his humour, could we fail to abound in dreams and fictions, pensively composed, dejection taken up for pleasure's sake, and gilded sympathies, the willow wreath, and sober posies of funereal flowers, gathered among those solitudes sublime from formal gardens of the Lady Sorrow, did sweeten many a meditative hour. Yet still in me with those soft luxuries mixed something of stern mood, an underthirst of vigour seldom utterly allayed. And from that source how different a sadness would issue, let one incident make known. When from the Valais we had turned, and clomb along the Simplon's steep and rugged road, following a band of muleteers, we reached a halting place, where all together took their noontide meal. Hastily rose our guide, leaving us at the board. A while we lingered, then paced the beaten downward way that led right to a rough stream's edge, and there broke off. The only track now visible was one that from the torrent's further brink held forth conspicuous invitation to ascend a lofty mountain. After brief delay, crossing the unbridged stream, that road we took, and clomb with eagerness, till anxious fears intruded, for we failed to overtake our comrades gone before. By fortunate chance, while every moment added doubt to doubt, a peasant met us, from whose mouth we learned that to the spot which had perplexed us first we must descend, and there should find the road which in the stony channel of the stream lay a few steps, and then along its banks, and that our future course, all plain to sight, was downwards with the current of that stream. Loath to believe what we so grieved to hear, for still we had hopes that pointed to the clouds, we questioned him again, and yet again, but every word that from the peasant's lips came in reply, translated by our feelings, ended in this, that we had crossed the Alps. Imagination, here the power so called through sad incompetence of human speech, that awful power rose from the mind's abyss, like an unfathered vapour that enwraps, at once, some lonely traveller. I was lost, halted without an effort to break through, but to my conscious soul I now can say, I recognize thy glories, in such strength of usurpation when the light of sense goes out, but with a flash that has revealed the invisible world, doth greatness make abode, there harbours. Whether we be young or old, our destiny, our being's heart and home, is with infinitude, and only there. With hope it is, hope that can never die, effort and expectation and a desire, and something evermore about to be. Under such banners militant, the soul seeks for no trophies, struggles for no spoils that may attest her prowess, blessed in thoughts that are their own perfection and reward, strong in herself and in beatitude that hides her, like the mighty flood of Nile poured from his fount of Abyssinian clouds to fertilize the whole Egyptian plain. The melancholy slackening that ensued upon those tidings by the peasant given was soon dislodged. Downwards we hurried fast, and with the half-shaped road which we had missed, entered a narrow chasm. The brook and road were fellow travellers in this gloomy strait, and with them did we journey several hours at a slow pace. The immeasurable height of woods decaying, never to be decayed, the stationary blasts of waterfalls, and in the narrow rent at every turn winds thwarting winds, bewildered and forlorn, the torrents shooting from the clear blue sky, the rocks that muttered close upon our ears, black drizzling crags that spake by the wayside as if a voice were in them, the sick sight and giddy prospect of the raving stream, the unfettered clouds and region of the heavens, tumult and peace, darkness and delight, were all like workings of one mind, the features of the same face, blossoms upon one tree, characters of the great apocalypse, the types and symbols of eternity, of first and last and midst and without end. That night our lodging was a house that stood alone within the valley, at a point where, tumbling from aloft, a torrent swelled the rapid stream whose margin we had trod. A dreary mansion, large beyond all need, with high and spacious rooms, deafened and stunned by noise of waters, making innocent sleep lie melancholy among weary bones. Uprisen betimes, our journey we renewed, led by the stream, ere noonday magnified into a lordly river, broad and deep, dimpling along in silent majesty, with mountains for its neighbours, and in view of distant mountains and their snowy tops, and thus proceeding to Locarno's lake, fit resting place for such a visitor. Locarno, spreading out in width like heaven, how dost thou cleave to the poetic heart, bask in the sunshine of the memory? And Como, thou, a treasure whom the earth keeps to herself, confined as in a depth of Abyssinian privacy. I spake of thee, thy chestnut woods, and garden plots of Indian corn tended by dark-eyed maids, thy lofty steeps and pathways roofed with vines, winding from house to house, from town to town, sole link that binds them to each other. Walks, league after league, and cloistral avenues, where silence dwells if music be not there. While yet a youth undisciplined in verse, through fond ambition of that hour, and interrupting oft that eager game, from under Esthwaite's splitting fields of ice, the
Excuse me? Goodbye.